body to body, creating a wall around the person that they protect. And I heard you speak about this earlier, Shannon and Bill, but I mean, these guys we have an incredible team of people who protect presidents and presidential candidates in this country, and we need to be very grateful for them. And I would just stress that we're still waiting to learn the details about exactly what happened here and where this person who started this incident is right now. And that is the story of this evening. And I do expect, as I heard Bill say earlier, that we will likely hear from President Trump tonight. So we will stay tuned for that as well, guys.
Thank you, Martha. Martha McCallum joining us as our coverage continues live here in Milwaukee. And Shannon, just want to bring out, there's a lot of information out there from the Butler County, Pennsylvania DA. And he apparently, his name is Goldinger, Goldinger. And apparently he's speaking with a number of members of the press. None of this has been confirmed, so I just want to walk cautiously with it. But listening to David McCormick describe that man who was seated near him, being carried out with numerous tourniquets on his body. There were casualties. As to whether or not there were fatalities, we hope and pray that's not the case. We can't confirm that right now, but there certainly were others who were injured. How many, we can't say either. But when we look at that video, it appears, Shannon, you know, he grabs his right ear before you hear a sound. And then after that, there was a repeated sound over and again. In addition to that, you have, in all likelihood, what would be the Secret Service returning fire, and that's why we have that quote that we have used now, shooter is down. So we'll wait for an update out of Butler, but we just want to bring you some of that now.
We're just getting something coming in from the Associated Press here. This is to the AP. They say the shooter is dead and a rally attendee was killed at the Trump event in Pennsylvania. They say the Butler County District Attorney is telling them that. That's according to the Associated Press. The shooter dead, and someone also who was attending that rally. That's the latest from there on
Gotcha.
site.
That DA's first name is Richard Goldinger. It's just coming up right now. Also another report, audience member, as you say, killed, the shooter dead, another person said to be in serious condition, and we'll wait for more information on the condition for that purpose. Katie Pavlich joins us now. She spoke to the U.S. ambassador who was also at that rally. Katie, where are you, and what have you learned for us?
Well, I had a phone call with former Ambassador Kip Tom, who was in the front row at this rally, sitting very close to Senate candidate David McCormick. And the first thing he said to me was, "I never thought this would happen again." He then went into details about what he saw. He said he saw gun smoke and bullets flying from multiple directions. And that's what we've heard from a number of people tonight, given their first eyewitness testimony being there. And he also had the same opinion that the president was lucky to be alive, which of course is what Senate candidate Dave McCormick also told you guys earlier about the current situation. So I'm sure we will hear from the president. We are 2 days from the RNC convention. He has every intention of moving forward and showing up there. It's pretty incredible to watch him walk off that stage shouting, "Fight, fight, fight." And I look forward to hearing what he has to say about this historic moment that we were watching. We always say we have a front row seat to history, and this is a terrible day for the country and the current situation that we're in.
Katie, thank you for that. Katie Pavlich joining us from Washington, D.C., and we'll see you in Milwaukee a bit later in the week. Shannon?
Yeah, let's check in with Alexis McAdams. She was there as this happened, and I believe she's got an eyewitness or maybe more with her. Alexis, we toss to you.
Yeah, so we were able to get out of that area after they turned it into an active crime scene, Shannon and Bill, and we were able to talk with some people who heard what we heard too, those several pops as they all took cover here in Butler, Pennsylvania. I'm going to take you closer here to who we're talking to. So you guys are, I mean, in shock. One, you can't leave because they've closed down the roads, and two, you're still trying to figure out exactly what happened. What did you hear when you were inside of that rally?
I heard about 7 or 8 shots. She's better at this than me. I heard her do the talking.
But what did you do as soon as you heard that? Did you try to get down?
No,
or?
I did not. I stood up and tried to film it, but it didn't work very good. They're the ones that hit the ground.
Okay. So walk me through, too,
I would have taken a shot for me.
What you heard. I mean, you were pretty close, or where were you?
We were right behind where the chairs were at. And we started hearing, I thought it was firecrackers. And I'm like, who would be shooting off firecrackers in here? Well, then everybody somebody started yelling, hit the ground, hit the ground. And when I looked over, and then I saw the smoke from the gunfire. So then everybody hit the ground, and he kept standing. I was like, you got to get down, boy. You got to get down. They're going to shoot you. Because if they would have had like a machine gun, they could have taken us all out. So then we lay there for a while, and we saw different places where the gunshots were at. And then they got President Trump down, Secret Service did, and they took him out of there and got him off of the stage. And he was bleeding. And so then my son and daughter-in-law was back behind us, back behind the fence. And we was worried about them. We couldn't call them. And so we started trying to go after them then when they finally let us up. And they had been right by the fence where the other shooter was. There was one I heard in the water tower. There was one by the fence.
And still, obviously, initial reports. But what we do know, according to the AP, this is coming, Bill, from the Butler County District Attorney's Office, saying the shooter dead and a rally attendee killed. So this is all still developing out here. But to hear those numerous pops and then to have so many people in that crowd try to take cover there, people were, trying to get out of there as quickly as they could. To see the former president down on the ground, to come back up, to see some blood possibly on his ear, but then leave with a fist pump. People were pretty emotional. You think about all this, right? When you go into these events, as you both have before, you go through that Secret Service check, they go through your bags, they wand people down, but it's always a concern when you're going to a big rally like this, and people were excited to be out here. They were here for hours just trying to get a glimpse of the former president. That includes you as well. So just tell me a little bit about what you heard.
Just heard pop, pop, pop. Right away you think, well, maybe firecrackers, and you're kind of stunned. And then fire, and then like return fire, and then get down. So we got down and we huddled and we just started praying. The lady in front of me that laid on top of me, she was crying. I said, it's going to be okay, honey. We just prayed, and then after a little while we could see Trump get up, and he gave the, like, I'm okay. And so then we got up. Like, as a true leader, he was like leading us.
You could hear him yell to the few of the Secret Service members saying, let me get my shoes. I mean, he wanted to walk away.
There he is leading us like it's okay. You know what I mean? That gives you goosebumps.
Were you afraid for your safety?
After when I heard the get down, then I realized, yeah, for sure it was for sure shots. But when we started to pray, I felt protected, and I just want to give God all the glory. God gets all the glory that Trump was protected and people were protected. I'm sorry about a fatality. I'm sorry. I pray God comforts those people. We've been praying the whole time since it happened for anybody involved.
Did you see any blood on the former president when he got back up?
I talked to ABC News, and they just said that there was. ABC News said there was someone in his ear, but they said that could have been from secrets. That may not have been his blood, and it may have been from Secret Service getting him down.
Okay, thank you for talking to us. I'm glad that you're okay. Thank you. So we're just going to walk you a little bit over here, just kind of see what the scene is going on here. This is where everybody was lining up, okay, before they went in. We're talking like 8 hours in the hot sun out here in Butler County, where these people wanted to catch a glimpse of the president. They were out here buying hats and doing everything they could to kind of get ready for the day. He was up there only for a few minutes, the former president, before this shooting happened. We were in the media area, and when we heard those pops, you kind of look around, you try to get your bearings and figure out what's going on. Then you saw the Secret Service really swoop in there and get into action quickly. The former president down on the ground behind that podium. We were talking with some law enforcement out here as well when they were trying to figure out what was happening. They were trying to survey, Bill, where these possible shots were coming from. But one person we talked to who was out here on the ground with law enforcement said it sounded like there was a silencer, and that's why people were wondering really what it was, because you couldn't hear it. It was like muffled. And so that's why they moved in so quickly and tried to do everything that they could to make sure the president was okay.
All right, Alexis McAdams on the scene.
So just stay with us if you want. Do you want to hear from anybody else?
Sure, Alexis, if you are ready to go.
If you want to. I know you guys are enrolling coverage. We just might as well. We're trying to grab as many people as they're walking out.
Yes,
but you were
absolutely.
inside, and just kind of tell me what you heard.
He tells it better than I do.
Okay, what happened?
Well, we were basically standing. There was a Trump campaign people at the tent right there on the corner, and we kind of went all together towards where he was speaking, as close as you could get. And one of the kids was really tall, so my wife's like, "Hey, can you take this, and get me a picture of him real close?" And next thing you know, as soon as he pointed the camera, all hell broke loose.
walk me through how many shots or pops, rather, you heard and what you were thinking. I mean, were you afraid for your safety? You're here with your family?
I just wanted everybody to be calm and don't panic, because they're not aiming for us. You know what I mean? So.
Do you ever think? I mean, you came to this big rally. I think you think about.
Birthday,
well,
my wedding anniversary.
Okay.
And it just seems odd.
Yeah, well, to know, though, that there's that many people waiting here, and then they did check everybody. I mean, did you think the service, the Secret Service, did a good job checking people? Or was there anything that you got, did you bring in bags or anything?
I think it was as good as you could expect. I mean, I was expecting a lot of people here, and that's what we got today, so.
What would you say to the former president if you could talk to him?
We love you, and we'll back you. We're backing you.
Were you worried that he was badly injured when you saw him hit the ground?
At first, I didn't see him hit the ground. I just was mainly trying to get people not to panic and overrun each other. I mean, in a situation like that, everybody just wanted to scatter.
Did you get out pretty quickly? I mean, there were a lot of people that were pushed into that.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about getting out quickly. I just wanted to, the people around me to be safe. I mean, that's all you can hope for. And
knowing how much is going on in the world, and when it comes to politics, I mean, it's like you can't even, people get mad at their neighbors, they get mad, they lose friends over politics. Did you ever worry about kind of coming to these rallies and being unsafe?
This is my first rally, so, I mean, what an experience before everything happened. But, I mean, people are going to do what people do, man.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's what we're hearing out here. Thanks for talking to us. We'll send it back to you.
Alexis,
Wow.
thank you very much.
Really great stuff, Alexis. Thank you. We'll get back to you in a moment here. There was a lot of reaction coming in, Shannon. We just want to rifle through a little bit of what we're picking out. Robert Kennedy Jr., who's running his own campaign for the White House in the summer of 2024, sent out this on X a moment ago. Remember, this is a young man at the time when his own father was shot and killed in Los Angeles in 1968. He said, "Now is the time for every American who loves our country to step back from the division, renounce all violence, and unite in prayer for President Trump and his family." In addition, former President George Bush, 43, he said, "We're grateful that President Trump is safe following the cowardly attack on his life." Here's another one from Team Trump, and Stephen Chung, who is in all likelihood traveling with the president, was with him there today in Butler, Pennsylvania. Quote, he says on X, "President Trump thanks law enforcement and first responders for their quick action during this heinous act. He is fine and is being checked out at a local medical facility. More details will follow." We'll try and get more reaction as we move through the evening here. There is, Shannon, as we go, there's a lot of information flying out there, and a lot of it's on social media, and we're trying to parse what we think we can report now and what we can't. There is a video out there that shows an individual lying on a rooftop and not moving. The suggestion is that that could have been the gunman. We have no confirmation of that. But if that was from a certain distance away, a person with a firearm, with a long-range rifle, would have been able to reach that stage fairly easily from that location. So we'll wait for more information from authorities, and we'll be patient as we go.
Yeah,
Shannon.
we will. And we do know from local authorities there on the ground are telling the Associated Press that the shooter is down, that another attendee was killed. There are others, at least one other, we believe, in critical condition. We're also hearing from the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, who has walked through this political violence with her own family, her own husband attacked in their home out in California. She says, as one whose family has been the victim of political violence, I know firsthand that political violence of any kind has no place in our society. I thank God that former President Trump is safe. As we learn more details about this horrifying incident, let us all pray. And it goes on from there for those who are protectors, for those who are still first responders who are now in the middle of this investigation. But again, across the political spectrum, we're hearing with a uniform voice Bill denouncing what has happened today. And as we learn a little bit more about it, we do know the former president is doing just fine.
Okay, we're going to hear from a lot of people as we go throughout the evening. We're just at the very beginning of what will be a significant American story. Paul Morrill joins us, former NYPD inspector. And Paul, welcome to our coverage. Your observations based on your own experience.
Well, first of all, if the reporting is accurate and we do have a victim that has succumbed to his or her wounds, that's just so tragic here. It looked for a while there that the only casualty would be that apparently minor wound to Donald Trump now, if the incident is indeed over, starts the backwards scrub, right? You got to figure out how this person was able to do what he or she did. If they did it from inside the perimeter, how that happened. We are getting some reporting, Bill, as you've mentioned, that it looks like it came from outside, might have involved a long gun. So they're going to look at, okay, were those situations secured and why not? But then there's going to be a deeper scrub and a simultaneous investigation here, and that is, did this person leave a footprint? And I would guard against looking on social media and taking viral reporting as accurate. We don't know yet, and as I mentioned earlier, you have to be very circumspect with this stuff. But that said, very often people who do this kind of thing do leave a pretty good footprint. And we need an investigation into how that happened. And let me go even further. That investigation needs to be transparent. We can't have the kind of stuff where we have a transcript that Merrick Garland doesn't want to, or rather a tape that Merrick Garland doesn't want to release. You know, we've been saying on this network that a lot of these groups, Antifa and some of the groups that have been occupying the campuses, et cetera, who appear to be quite radical, we need federal investigations, RICOs and other kind of collusive investigations to take them out and figure out why they're doing, how they're funded, et cetera. And we've got none of that. And, you know, I don't want to start placing blame now. We don't have all the facts. But what I would say is that whatever's done in response to this by the federal authorities, and this will be a federal investigation, that has to be transparent because, you know, there's enough distrust on both sides. And we need to know what went on with this thing and what's going to be going on going forward.
Indeed. Paul, thank you. Stand by. We'll get more momentarily. But Shannon, right now, we go back to someone who was there.
We do. John David Longo is the mayor of Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. Mayor, we understand you were at the rally. Thank you for joining us. What can you tell us from being there on the scene? Mayor, are you there?
Wow, that's a shame. Okay, so
we'll get back to him.
We had his shot and we lost it, and we'll do our best to try and make a connection with him yet again. Paul, one of the things that we were talking about earlier was how you are able to corral 10, 20, 30,000 people into an area and keep it safe. Paul, hold that thought. The mayor is back now. John David Longo, if you can hear us, you were there. Please relay your experience as you saw it. Okay, we are 0 for 2 on our attempts at that. Paul, how do you keep a place like this secure when you think about rallies that go back 8 years, Paul? 8 years.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's very, very difficult. You know, Alexis was talking about the fact that they did do wanding, which is generally very helpful and has a prophylactic effect. People see that, and so they say, you know what, I can't come in with anything if they ever had a desire to. But the truth of the matter is that when you have an open air situation where you have so many people in place, et cetera, it is hopeful, all right? And there are weapons these days that can even defeat wanding. I'm not telling the audience anything they don't know. The response now is going to be very telling. I can tell you that here in New York City, the NYPD is deploying heavy units in and around Trump Tower to make sure there isn't some copycat stuff. And you have to think of maybe even response stuff. You know, are people on the other side going to feel vengeful? So we have to dial it back. Everybody has to be cool-headed, and we have to find out exactly what happened here. But, you know, before we start placing blame, et cetera, you have to say to yourself, we need to know with clarity, because that's how the conspiracy theories start. And we've had enough of those.
Mm-hmm. Paul, thank you. Got a statement now from the former president, Barack Obama. It reads this way. There is absolutely no place for political violence in our democracy. Although we don't yet know exactly what happened, we should all be relieved that former President Trump was not seriously hurt and use this moment to recommit ourselves to civility and respect in our politics. Michelle and I are wishing him a quick recovery. End quote. Shannon.
Let's go check in with Alexis McAdams again. She's been there on the ground as all of this occurred and has talked to a number of witnesses and people who I'm sure, Alexis, are still in a bit of a state of shock.
Yeah, and that includes who we're talking to right now, Blake, who you were inside. We actually talked with him, Shannon, earlier when you were doing special coverage. You were up on the stage, we grabbed you up, and then we all got pushed out by Secret Service. Correct. But walk me through what happened. You were really close. You're a delegate for former President Trump, so you were pretty close to that stage. What'd you hear?
Well, I was listening to him. He was talking. I think he had the slide up on the big screen about how immigration has increased under Biden. And as I was watching him, I heard what I thought were just a noise. I was hoping it was a joke. I didn't know if it was fireworks or what. It seemed to be coming from my left. So I turned to my left, and I'm just going to turn this off here. Or, no, let's let it go. Sorry. Turned to my left when I heard the sound and didn't see anything. When I looked back towards the president, the Secret Service was actively tackling him to the ground. And at that point, I began to hear some other sounds, and I said, okay, this is gunfire. And I think then I did duck down. I didn't dive on the ground, but I did duck down, and then it seemed like it stopped. And then I got up and was just trying to pay attention to what had happened to the president.
When he came back up before he gave that fist pump and then was taken off the stage, it looked like he possibly had some blood, as you mentioned too before, right on his ear. I mean, what did you exactly see, and how much blood did you see?
Not a lot. I mean, kind of like where maybe you cut your head. And it did not seem to be coming from his ear. It seemed to be coming from above his ear. But it could have been he could have been tackled in such a way that he cut himself. It could be Secret Service agents' blood on their hands that got transferred to him. I didn't know what it was, but it didn't appear to be overly serious when taken in combination with his defiant attitude and his fist pump. Yeah, I think he wanted to let us know he was all right.
How shocked were you? I mean, you're getting ready to go to the RNC. I mean, everyone's mind was on the excitement at that rally, and then you hear these pops, and it's, what a lot of people is their biggest fear when they come to a big event like this.
Well, I can't say it's one of mine. I as separated as we are politically in this country, I am not one who thinks that we're on the verge of hostilities. I didn't think that I would ever see anything like this happen. And even like my initial reaction was, it's a joke, it's a prank. And it was only when I saw the actions being taken by the Secret Service that it became apparent that it wasn't.
They were able to move in pretty quickly. You could see the snipers up on the roof. At this point, we're hearing that the possible, suspect or person was killed, and then a person also that was at the rally was killed.
I'm sorry about one. I'm not sorry about the other. Tremendous wake-up call for our country. This can't be condoned. It can't be tolerated. And, we have a very open society. We have a very open political discourse. It should never include violence. Never. Any groups that espouse violence, there should be no tolerance for it.
Last thing, when people were moving out before the Secret Service cleared us out too, did you talk to anybody, and kind of what are people out here saying? Are they nervous? Are they scared?
Very many people were upset. The whole gamut of emotions, from being upset to prayer, to concern, to anger, to shock. I think I saw it all.
Are you going to the RNC still?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I fully expect to see President Trump on the stage on Thursday accepting the nomination.
Okay, thank you for talking to us. I'm glad you're okay. So that's what we're hearing out here on the ground, but definitely many people are still shaken up, as you can expect, trying to figure out what happened. And we also have the mayor,
Alexis,
Bill,
thank you.
if you guys want me to talk with him right now. The mayor, I know you guys were trying to get him earlier.
Go for it.
Yeah,
I think they were talking to you on the phone.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from him.
All right, so tell me, you were up on the stage, you were near the former president. What happened?
I was actually with the president about 15, 20 minutes before that awful thing occurred. And my wife and I and my family were seated front row, just left of stage. And obviously a complete 180. We all came in here with smiles and hope for the future. And what's happened today, I'm speechless over. All I can think of right now is that this is representative of the vitriol and the hate that a lot of people in the United States seem to have for people with conservative ideals and principles behind them. And I'm just sorry that it's come to that. And I'm sorry that it's come to that here in Butler County.
Where were you standing when the former president ended up hitting the ground there, right behind that podium?
Was Donald's there?
I was standing right on the barrier to the left of the stage, front row. And at first I heard that first crack. I started to look around. I thought it couldn't possibly have been a round. I thought for sure it might have been a firecracker. But I looked at my wife, who's a state police officer. I pushed her down to the ground. On the second one, it sounded to me like it might have been a 22 round or something similar to it. I asked her if she thought it sounded like a 22. She said yes. We just yelled for everybody to get down on the ground and to stay down to allow the Secret Service and law enforcement to do what it is they had to do. We weren't really quite sure what was happening, and unfortunately, just a few feet behind me, there was an unfortunate individual who lost his life to this maniac.
Did you see the person who was shot?
I did. I did see some of that. Of course, I didn't actually see the shot itself. But I did.
So you turn around, so you push your wife down, you look around for your family, you take cover yourself, you see the president get back up, give that fist pump, you turn around and you see somebody in the crowd had been shot.
They were shot, and they were on the bleachers, and it was just a really sad thing to witness. And unfortunately, I understand that individual lost their life.
Was it a man? Was it a woman? What did you see?
From what I saw, was that there was a gentleman there who again was shot, and very sad just to witness that. I can't think or imagine what his friends and family must be feeling right now, thinking he was coming here to come and enjoy a day with fellow Republicans, and would end up losing his life. And my thoughts and my prayers go out to his family.
You know all the local officials. I mean, this was federal, state, local. We're all out here responding to this, and they responded quick. Have you heard from any of your partners in the law enforcement area here in Butler County, and what are they saying?
I've heard from a couple individuals, but I just want to say, unfortunately this time I don't want to comment on anything I might have heard, because I don't want anything to be shared that might make it more difficult for law enforcement professionals to get to the bottom of it, and I certainly don't want to make their job any harder. So, at this time I'm going to say that I know everything that you know, ma'am, and we'll keep it at that.
But you are hearing that it was definitely gunshots that were fired.
That's what I'm hearing, and from my own experience, and I did spend some time in the Marine Corps. My wife is a police officer. My father-in-law is a retired police officer. My brother-in-law is a police officer. We know the sound of gunfire when we see it, and from what I witnessed and the blood on the ground, it seems that certainly is the case, and it's just a disgusting thing to have had to happen today.
This was a huge day for you. It was the mayor of a tiny area here to have a big rally in Butler County. You were excited to have the former president out here. Did you get to talk to him much?
I did. I got to spend a few minutes with him, and I was elated just to have been able to talk with him. My wife and I, again, just 15, 20 minutes before the shots were fired, and we had a pleasant conversation, and he was kind enough to even say that I watched you and you did a good job, and I thought, wow, how great that was, that feeling. And then of course the feeling now is indescribable, as I'm feeling something completely opposite from what it was that we felt in that tent with him, and the smile that was on his face turned to chaos and despair. It certainly did.
And then stay with us just for a second. Bill, Shannon, I don't know if you have any specific questions you want us to ask the mayor, since you guys were trying to call him too.
Yeah, the only thing, Alexis, that we're trying to clarify, if he can, did he see that on stage or in another area of that rally?
Did you see the shooting happen when you saw the shooting happen, and you saw the person who was shot? Well, how close were they to the stage? And do you think that these shots were fired inside of the rally or outside of the rally?
I was trying to figure that out myself, ma'am. What I can tell you is that I was seated in the front row, stage left, so to the right of the president, as near to the stage as you could be. The individual who was shot was in the bleachers about 15, 20 feet behind me. Again, I was scanning the crowd and trying to figure out if shots were coming from within or without. I'm inclined to believe that it was from outside, but I don't want you to hold me to that, of course, because there was just so much going on right there.
Still developing. That area where the motorcade pulled up behind, and you were in that area when you were greeting the former president, but it looked like there was some space, right? It's like a neighborhood surrounding this. So we saw what it looked like inside the rally. We saw the stage, we saw the bleachers, we saw the thousands of people. But talk to me about kind of what's outside, since you know the area. I mean, is it a neighborhood, and could people have driven up pretty close?
There are single-family homes in this area, so yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, there are major arteries for traffic that come through here. It's not ridiculous to think that somebody who was a good shot could set up outside of this venue and with the right conditions be able to reach out and touch somebody in a bad way. Whoever this individual was or individuals were, I'm not really quite sure, because I haven't heard anything as far as what exactly had happened, but all I know is yes, I mean, it's certainly possible, but I just never would have thought that it would be possible here in our home. Butler County is very much so Trump country. We adore the president. He was very good to us during his tenure in office, and I never would have imagined that him coming here to Butler County would have meant that he would have had to experience this. And I'm glad that the president's safe. I heard that he's doing he's doing okay now. But again, I just want to go back to that individual who lost their life today. That individual came here looking for hope and inspiration in this upcoming cycle, and unfortunately is going to be with us. So I just hope the world sees what happened here today and is inspired to action. And when I say into action, I mean to prayer, to vote, of course, to bring God back into our society here, because this is the act of a godless society that we saw today.
Thank you for talking to us, Mayor. I'm glad that you're okay. Glad your family's okay. Unfortunately, as you just heard, one person who was at that rally confirmed dead, according to local officials. We're still trying to figure out exactly what all played out here.
All right, Alexis, thank you so much for all that on-the-ground coverage and with the witnesses there. Bill, and you and I, as I remember years ago, were doing the morning show the morning that Congressman Steve Scalise was shot. And that horrific situation and what happened there on that ball field as they were practicing. He's got a post now on X saying, praying for President Donald Trump. There is never any place for political violence, and he would know it better than anyone would. And thank God he's had a full recovery. It seems like President Trump is in a much different situation, by all accounts doing fine, defiantly raising his fist and wanting to let that crowd know he was just fine as he was leaving, as we continue to get reaction pouring in, Bill.
So before that Butler, Pennsylvania rally was underway, the president left his home in Mar-a-Lago, Florida. Our own Harris Faulkner was with him, and Harris sent this message to us and a couple pictures that I'm in West Palm. Spent the day at Mar-a-Lago with President Trump. Was with a minute before he left for PA. He was so excited to see the voters in Butler, PA. He joked and told me our extended interview, quote, will be a ratings grabber. Please play it for the people, Harris, end quote. Harris concludes by saying, pray for our nation's 45th president of the United States. More reaction to Gabby Giffords was a Democratic congresswoman from Arizona. She went home for a Saturday morning appearance in Tucson, Arizona, when she was shot in the face. And Gabby Giffords survived. She was always one of these members of Congress who was always willing to talk about the issues and come on the air and debate them. And she always did it with a smile. And then later with the now Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona, her statement is this: political violence is terrifying. I know. I'm holding former President Trump and all those affected by today's indefensible act of violence in my heart. Political violence is un-American and is never acceptable. Never. Shannon.
So we're told now, of course, this is a federal investigation, that the U.S. Secret Service is handling this, and all of our questions about what happened there today go to them. I believe Congressman Byron Donalds, a Republican out of Florida, is with us. Congressman, your thoughts at this moment we have reached in our political climate, so inflamed, and what appears to be an attempt to take out a former president?
My first thoughts are, relieved and grateful that President Trump is okay. My second thoughts are that this violence in our politics has got to end. I mean, I know that we talk about these issues in inflamed tones, but there's no excuse for violence, trying to assassinate a president, former president, elected official. There's no place for that whatsoever. And I know the Secret Service is going to do everything they can to continue to protect President Trump. I think my third thought is Americans need to get out and vote. There's only one way to really deal with this, and that's to get out, get yourself to the polls. Don't worry about news reports or anything like that. Get to the polls, and it's in the hands of the American people to have the country that they want going forward. And that's a country where we embrace tolerance. We're not just have one thought, one mind, one way of looking at our issues or one way of looking at the world. That you get out and vote, you make your voices heard, and that we are tolerant of all voices, even when we don't agree with them.
Sir, well stated. Thank you, Byron Donalds, a Republican congressman from Florida. If we have our colleague Martha McCallum, I would like to try and bring her back in.
Hi, Bill.
Martha, we've been waiting to hear from President Biden. What do you have on that front now?
So President Biden has just put out a statement saying that he is praying for the family, that he is praying for President Trump, and that political violence is never acceptable. He's going to make a statement. We're just hearing about this just a few seconds ago. He will deliver a statement to the nation after the apparent assassination attempt on former President Trump. So it took a while. He said he was being briefed by Secret Service on getting as much information as he can on this situation, but now we are told that he will deliver. This is AP reporting remarks to the nation after the apparent assassination attempt on former President Trump. And the more we are seeing, Bill, about and hearing reports about, and we don't have this confirmed, although there are images, as you mentioned earlier, about a man who was on a roof. There's a bystander who speaks to someone at the BBC in great detail about what he saw and that they alerted police, according to him. So we have to obviously be very careful with all of this, but there is at least one person who has lost their life, and the former president of the United States is extraordinarily lucky to have survived what is looking like an attempt on his life. And, you know, it is just an extraordinary series of events that we're seeing unfold here, but it is absolutely shocking. But, you know, we were talking before about the people in the stands, and if it came from further away, if it came from a building top back there, it explains why everyone continued to look forward, and we think that someone on the upper left-hand side of those stands went down and was shot, according to these, you know, details that we all have to confirm. But that's why you didn't see people, you know, sort of darting in any direction to tackle anyone, if indeed the person who did this was over on that roof. So a lot of information out there, as you said, Bill. We want to be very cautious about this, but it is becoming increasingly likely that the president was just extraordinarily lucky to be alive, and we hear that he is fine, and we're waiting for more from him. But President Biden will be speaking from Delaware, we're told, fairly shortly.
Yeah, thank you, Martha, for that. We'll wait for that. Lucas Tomlinson's in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Tells us Biden will speak soon. Behind me at the police station, so we will await that. Alexis McAdams is doing terrific work. She's our reporter on the scene in Butler, Pennsylvania, and she was dispatched for this assignment, and this assignment was expected to be a pump-up rally before the Republican convention gets underway in 48 hours from now here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Alexis, you have a very different story in your hands right now. Hello again.
Yeah. Hey, Bill. Yeah, we had no idea that this was obviously going to take place. We were trying to figure out what those pops were. And when we were up on that media stage, you know, I was standing there watching the former president talk about immigration, and he was actually referencing a big graph and saying, like, look how many things have changed under the Biden administration, and this is why I'm a good choice. And then all of a sudden, you heard all these pops, which now we are hearing from law enforcement sources were possible gunshots. So we're trying to talk with people who were inside of that rally, Bill. I'm just going to check in with people as we develop here live with this coverage. So you were inside. What exactly did you hear, and what did you see?
So we heard something that sounded like a firecracker, and we turned around, and there was people behind us, and it was two of our guys, I think, in camo uniform shooting back. And then we seen a guy inside the crowd here, probably 15 away from us, get shot. They said there was a casualty, and he was dead, and somebody else got shot. And then apparently our guys were shooting on top of the building, and everybody started cheering once they got the shooter. You could see him up on top of the building there.
Okay. So when this was all happening, because now when you play it back, you can, you know, kind of figure it out and make it more succinct. But when this was happening, did you know where these possible shots were coming from?
I mean, I could see the guys literally the shots that we heard at the time, we thought it was somebody. Turned around, we seen smoke literally coming out of the barrel. The guys behind us, at the time, we thought they were coming at us, but it happened to be our guys shooting back at him. So everybody was freaking out, thinking we were going to get shot by the people right behind us, but they were actually protecting us, shooting the shooter.
And where was the shooter, according to what you're seeing and when you were there?
We were here, and our shooter's up to our left, probably, I don't know, 40 feet away or so, up on top of that building or whatever it was.
Yeah, but the possible shooter, whoever possibly fired.
In the crowd that got shot. I don't know if he had whatever. Somebody said he had a pistol. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but somebody in the crowd got shot from our guys or somebody, I don't know, and he... whatever.
So it's a confusing situation. But when you heard those pops, did they sound like they were coming from in the crowd, outside of the crowd, outside of that fence near the retention pond?
It literally sounded like it was 20 feet behind us, right outside the fence, right there. I mean, it was literally 10 feet behind us. The guys that were our guys were 15 feet behind us. We literally watched them shoot back. I mean, they were right there.
How many shots did it look like the law enforcement fired at a possible shooter?
2 to 4. I mean, there was at least there was two different sets of shots. You could hear two different guns. There was 4 shots from at least one and 2 shots from another gun that you could tell. There was 2 different guns that I could hear. I don't know which was which. It was hard to tell which was which. Okay. All you could see was smoke, and you could hear the bullets, and then you seen people, and somebody got shot, and you could actually... Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Glad you're okay. But that's what we're hearing. At least one person shot in that crowd has died, according to the Butler County District Attorney. Bill, we'll keep you posted on what else we hear.
All right, thanks, Alexis McAdams. Back with you momentarily. Shannon?
All right, we're going to bring in Congressman Dan Muser out of Pennsylvania. Congressman, thank you for joining us. What can you tell us?
Hi, Shannon. Hey, much of what you heard was quite accurate. The president was 6 minutes into his speech, 7 minutes. Next thing you know, we heard gunfire. Some people speculated. Somebody said there's firecrackers behind us. It sounded like it was very close. I was sitting in the front row to the right of the president with Dave McCormick, Senate candidate, as well as Mike Kelly, one of my colleagues. And then we saw the president seeming grab, and he dropped he hit the deck. He knew he was being fired upon, and that's pretty much when everyone began. And then Secret Service did its job. Secret Service was up there fast, and then they got on top of the. They returned fire on the shooter pretty fast. I mean, it sounded like it was real close to us. And I'll also add the one fatality that I believe is a fatality. I don't want to overstate things. Was no more than 20 feet behind us. So certainly our prayers and are certainly with that individual.
Yes, sir. In which direction was the Secret Service firing?
Well, you know, I didn't see the Secret Service necessarily firing. The pictures that I've just seen of what the likely shooter up on the roof certainly makes sense, because that did seem to be where the sound of gunfire was coming from. But I actually did not witness the Secret Service returning fire. I saw them scattering and on the move pretty fast. But when I said the Secret Service responded, they were on top of the president to protect him first. But I will tell you, once even the Secret Service surrounded the president, there was additional shots fired. So it was quite a terrible scene.
I'm sure. Sir, thank you for joining us. Dan Muser is a congressman from Pennsylvania. He doesn't represent that district necessarily. His district's a little further east in Pennsylvania, which you know is going to be a battleground state in November. But tonight, it is the story in the world as we watch this unfold. A little bit of information on the election front. We're hearing from the Biden campaign that it will pause all outbound communications and working right now to pull down all television ads as they relate to the election as quickly as possible. We also do believe we'll see the president momentarily, and for that we go back to Delaware and Lucas Tomlinson for more there. Lucas.
Well, Bill, we are just minutes away from President Biden addressing the nation about this shooting. That was the key word used in the statement from President Biden that Martha read earlier. Let me just read it one more time. I have been briefed on the shooting at Donald Trump's rally in Pennsylvania, which by all intensive purposes has to now be called and characterized as an assassination attempt against the former president. We're told the motorcade is here. It just arrived. We saw numerous press reporters walking into this police station right behind me, Bill. And we are minutes away from President Biden addressing the nation after this horrific shooting against the former President Donald Trump earlier today, Bill.
Okay, thank you, Lucas, very much for that. We're working with trying to get more information directly from the Trump family, the Trump campaign. Many of them are with him in that hospital in Pennsylvania. And as soon as we can get that, we'll pass it along to you. But we're told he's being treated and he's going to be okay. And that's about as close as we can get to the most accurate info.
Exactly. We're told he is in good spirits. Let's bring in Guy Benson and Charlie Hurt. They are here with us in Milwaukee. And again, as you guys were gearing up for our coverage here, a shock of the situation this afternoon as we learn more and more details trickling in. Your thoughts on where we are in the political discourse right now? Guy?
prepare for this event, a major convention starting in a couple moments here, and then all of a sudden these reports come in and it doesn't feel like it's real. Then you see instantly in this age footage of it because it was an on-stage rally. So your question, Shannon, about political discourse is one that I think we'll be poring over as a society now for days to come. I think it's an important one, and I think it's probably safe to say that many Americans tonight, of course, praying for the former president, praying for the family of those who are dead, at least one we've heard, just a bystander, someone who went to this rally, and perhaps having a collective sense that it's time to tone down our rhetoric across the spectrum, but there's going to be a lot of, I think, discussion about how President Trump has been portrayed, the rhetoric about him for not just days and weeks, months, years, some of it extremely vitriolic. And at some point, once we have all the information, which we don't have yet, I'm sure that is a very difficult and fraught conversation that is going to happen perhaps at high decibels for quite some time.
Okay, well, we are given a 2-minute warning from Joe Biden. So I may have to interrupt you, Charlie. I'm going to get a little more information. Jackie Heinrich is saying that per law enforcement source, shooter was killed by Secret Service counter-sniper team. If you have a sniper team that's responding, that is some distance away. Charlie, go ahead, but I may have to interrupt you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with everything Guy just said. You know, thank God the president appears to be well. I've heard from people in the campaign that he is in good spirits and that he is, you know, visiting with doctors as a precaution at this point. I hope, and it's of course an unspeakable tragedy to think of a citizen going to participate in a public.
Well, I plan on talking to them shortly, I hope, when I get back to the telephone. Look, there's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. And so I want to thank the Secret Service and all the agencies, including the state agencies, that have been engaged in making sure that people and we have more detail to come relative to other people maybe injured in the audience. I don't have all that detail. We'll make that available to you. I may be able to come back a little later tonight, but we'll put out a statement if I'm not able to if it's not convenient for you all. But the bottom line is, the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it. Everybody. I'll keep you informed, and if I'm able to speak to Donald, I'll let you know that as well. But so far, it appears he's doing well, number one. Number two, that they're thoroughly investigating what happened to anyone else in the audience. We have some reports, but not final reports. And every agency in the federal government, I'm going back to my phone to speak with the federal agencies that are being put together again to give me an updated briefing. Has anything happened? They learned any more in the last couple hours. So thank you very much, and I hope I get to speak to them tonight. And I'll get back to you if I do. Okay?
Mr. President, do you think this was an assassination attempt?
I don't know enough to. I have an opinion, but I don't have any facts. So I want to make sure we have all the facts before I make any more comments. Thank you.
Are you worried, President? Was the security failing, Mr. President?
So it was brief. The comments from Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. You heard the question about whether or not he thought it was an assassination attempt. By all accounts, and the witnesses that we have heard from in that field in Butler, Pennsylvania over the past 2 hours, someone, maybe more than one person, had the intent to show up at that rally today and take President Trump and his life off of this earth. That did not happen, and the reason might be in the following video that you're about to see. will begin seconds before you can see the president grab his right ear. And then after that, there's a series of pop, pop, pop. We're going to take you back to that moment. Butler, Pennsylvania, 50 miles due north of Pittsburgh. Watch.
Take a look at what happened.
Move it spare. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Ready. Move. Up. Move. Go. Up.
Hawkeye's here.
Hawkeye's here. Move it to the spare.
Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready.
We ready?
Shooter's down. Shooter's down.
Are we good? Shooter's down. Shooter's down. Are we good to move?
Shooter's down. We're good to move.
We're clear.
Let's move.
Let's move.
We're clear. Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus. Move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay. My shoes down. Watch out.
Honestly, it was so unbelievable. I didn't, this is like
There were two scenes in there, and we want to share one of those with you now. There's an iconic photo, including this one, of the president with his fist up in the air, which appears to be the time when he shook the Secret Service off and looked to the crowd and pumped his fist in the air. There's another shot, a low angle, right there, when you see the blood across the right cheekbone and the American flag against a brilliant blue background sky in Pennsylvania today. There was a third moment we saw, Shannon, the video of him getting in that SUV, and before the door shuts, he pumps his fist in the air one final time. You heard him say, and this was his voice now, "Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes." It happened at least twice, maybe three times. The president is likely alive at this moment by mere centimeters of a bullet that apparently grazed his right ear on that stage about 2 hours ago.
Yeah, and as you said, that is going to be a picture for the history books, essentially, as we watch this unfold live on television, and then the fallout as we hear from people across the political spectrum, including President Biden, who said he hopes to speak, he said, with Donald tonight. Bill, as you posited earlier, it's very possible we hear from President Trump tonight. I think they've got to be considering that and letting folks know that he is good, at least by all reports, in good spirits, that he is fine and safe. That's what we've heard from Secret Service and from his campaign as well. I would imagine he will be anxious, even if it's something on social media or elsewhere, to put out a message and let people know how he is doing. Just days away from coming here to the convention where, frankly, you know, security is always exceptionally tight. I can only imagine that the city will be even on tighter lockdown if that is possible. There is a march planned here in Milwaukee protesting the Republican Party, President Trump. They battled back and forth to get permission and to get the permits and the things that they needed here in Milwaukee to get done. That, we understand, is still planned for Monday, but it will be very interesting to see how this and the convention in Chicago and other political events, how things change after something so shocking and what appears to be an attempt, as you said, to take out a former president on this day as he rallied in Pennsylvania.
Obviously, you see on the screen is being investigated as an assassination attempt. President Joe Biden said during his statement that he may come out again tonight, if appropriate, was the suggestion. So we'll wait on that. Butler, Pennsylvania is a town of about 13,000. Butler, Pennsylvania as a county is about population 200,000. This is north of Pittsburgh. It's considered rural. This really has become the backbone of Donald Trump's political career. Rural America has hitched their wagon to his movement, and it all started in November of 2016. It got stronger on the election of 2020, and this is the reason why, running a campaign, trying to take back the White House, the president will go to a place like Butler, Pennsylvania today before tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, and knowing what a prize it is, the vice president was there today in the Philadelphia area. The first lady was there in Pittsburgh today. It is a prize, part of that blue wall that the Biden team has talked about they need to win, and that the Trump team thinks they may be able to pick off this time around. Meantime, on the political front, as we talked about moments ago, the Biden team taking down all outgoing political advertising, commercials, essentially a pause on what we are looking at in the middle of a very heated campaign season. I believe that we have Congressman Steve Scalise with us, who is a survivor of political violence. And Congressman, Bill and I were working together the morning you were shot. And thank God every day that you have recovered. But I got to ask you how this sat with you today, watching this play out.
Well, it was difficult to watch. You know, it brings back a lot of emotions. You know, my first thoughts were to pray for President Trump. You know, early reports, you really weren't sure what happened. You saw blood coming from his ear, but you know, as we see now, I mean, it was a clear assassination attempt. I think there was maybe some divine intervention in preventing that from being much worse than it could have been. There were other deaths. We pray for all of those that were injured or killed innocently. You know, the shooter was down, and you know that you saw law enforcement take swift action, and we saw that too on the ball field. Law enforcement is the first to go run towards the danger. They did it today. They did it on the ball field, and that's one of the things that keeps more people safe when evil people show up to do things like this. And there's no place for it. There's just no place for violence in our politics in America, and we can never accept it. We all need to forcefully denounce it.
Got a statement from the FBI a moment ago, sir. FBI personnel are on the scene in Butler, Pennsylvania. The FBI will continue to work jointly with the U.S. Secret Service as the investigation moves forward. Speaking of that investigation, Congressman, we're a long way from truly understanding what happened here. We're a long way from understanding whether there was one person or more than one person who showed up at that rally today. And I think about that day that you were laying on that softball field, in the baseball field rather, in Washington, D.C. with your colleagues, and a gentleman had driven from several states away. I believe it was Illinois, if my memory serves correctly, and he had a trunk load of weaponry, and he'd laid in wait for you and other colleagues to be there at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I believe that the shots hit you around 7:14 a.m. I think Rand Paul was at bat, I do believe, taking batting practice. And Brad Wenstrup, a Republican colleague of yours who did time in Iraq, he's a doctor by way of he's an expert in podiatry, and he was the one who attached the tourniquet to your body and likely saved your life. Yep. And I imagine there's a day that doesn't go by that you don't think exactly of that.
Oh, look, Brad is a hero of mine. Brad, if he would have left early like he does some practices to go to his office, he he had a meeting that didn't that got canceled, so he stayed later than he normally would have. Otherwise, I might not be here right now. The heroism of David Bailey and Crystal Griner, the two Capitol police officers who were there that day, who risked their lives, both of them, and both were hit during the shootout and kept going at it again. Risked their life to protect mine and everyone else's. I mean, the shooter's intent was to take out every Republican on that ball field. There would have been over a dozen members of Congress killed that day. But God was there too. There were miracles that happened that day, and a lot of prayer, a lot of miracles. And I know there are prayers going out right now to Donald Trump. And look, just remember, that night Donald Trump came to the hospital to check on me and just to console my family. And that was his birthday. He left a birthday party to come and check on me, and just the kind of person he is. I texted him a little while ago because he's a special man. He's a strong man. I know that. But he's a caring person. He cares about people. He cares about this country. And, I know there are a lot of prayers going out to him right now, as well as to the families of those who were also injured and killed.
Just one more question to you, sir. And thank you for being with us here. The baseball game was played among Democrats and Republicans. And as I recall, that was a moment of bipartisanship that Americans rarely see. And it's far too early to know the impact of a moment like this, but many have called to lower the temperature already. What's your sense about where that goes during an election season?
Yeah, I think, when you hear all these calls, and, you've been hearing it for months, gee whiz, if Donald Trump wins, it's going to be a threat to America. Those kind of things, that incendiary rhetoric needs to stop. Because all it takes is one person who's just unhinged to hear that and go act on it and think that that's their signal to go take somebody out. And we saw it in the case with the baseball shooting with me. And, it was somebody who was hearing far left rhetoric that was it was over the top, and he acted on it. And, in this case, we'll find out more information. We don't need to jump to conclusions, but I think we can all say it would be good if the rhetoric just gets dialed down. Let's focus on the issues that people care about. This is a great country. This is the greatest country in the history of the world. But we have problems, and let's talk about those problems, how to fix those problems. And I think that's where most Americans want to be. And let's have a next few months focus on how we get this country back on track. And I think that would be better for all of us.
Sir, thank you. Steve Scalise, the Republican from Louisiana. Really appreciate your input. Thank you, sir. We're going to bring in Bret Baier for a moment here. Bret's about to get on a plane. Before I do, however, I just received a text from the Trump family, and I'm going to read it word for word because it's not that long. It's Eric Trump, the son of Donald Trump, who says, my question was, how's Dad? His answer was, toughest guy I've ever met. That from the medical facility in Pennsylvania. I want to bring in our colleague Bret Baier. Before you jump on that plane, Bret, you're going to come to a city that's going to be kind of different for this convention, starting now.
Yeah, Bill, I'm on the plane now, and I've reached out to the campaign. A number of people in Trump world, all are saying good signs about the former president. That message you just got from Eric matches some of mine that I've received, which is great news. It is an indelible image now, that picture of him with his fist in the air with the bloody ear and face. I want to just talk for 1 second about some of the other reporting, and we're trying to dig this out. But Pennsylvania State Police, through a number of news organizations, has sources saying that one of the shots may have hit the teleprompter and that a glass shard may have hit the former president's ear. We don't know that to be a fact yet, but that is what Pennsylvania State Police have been telling some reporters there on the ground. The other thing is, obviously, Martha mentioned this earlier, the shooter, it looked like this person was on top of this building. There were eyewitnesses that said that they thought that that's where the shots were coming from and that person was dead on the building. We're trying to figure all of that out with the video that surfaced online. But what's important for people to realize is that in these moments, sometimes online goes way faster than where authorities are or what is true. So we have to try to find out real facts from real folks, and that's what we're doing right now.
Travel well, okay? We'll see you real soon. Bret Baier with us as he gets, yeah, you bet, on his way to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Shannon.
Yeah, okay. Do we want to start from the beginning to play this video for folks who have not seen it from the start? I believe we're going to get that racked up for you so you can watch the moments as we were all sitting here watching this live. We're going to give it to you as it went down. You can see as President Trump touches his ear, and it all goes from there. Let's watch.
Take a look at what happened.
Moving his spear. Hold. When you're ready. On you.
Ready?
Move.
Up.
Move. Go.
Up. Hawkeye's here. Hawkeye's here. Moving to the spare. Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready.
We ready?
Down. Shooter down.
Are we good?
Shooter's down.
Shooter's down. Are we good to move?
Shooter's down. We're good to move. We're clear. We're
Let's
clear.
move.
We're
Let's
clear.
move.
We're clear.
Come on.
Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we got to move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay. My shoes down. Get the shoe.
Watch out.
Wait.
Honestly, it was so unbelievable. I didn't. This is like.
Right, you've watched there the recap of what happened as President Trump was under attack, essentially there at this rally in Pennsylvania. We are told that the shooter is dead. We are told by local authorities there in Butler, Pennsylvania, also that there is another person who's been a fatality in this case, others who are potentially injured as well. But you saw President Trump wanting to send the signal, bloodied there and being dragged out by his Secret Service, that he was okay. His fist pumping in the air, letting folks know that he was not going down. He had said to the Secret Service, let me get my shoes, and he wanted to walk out there as they were trying to bundle and get him out, which is their job. They got that cordon around him, and what probably slowed them down, Bill, was him wanting to make sure that people knew he was okay.
Shannon, you were sitting here when the rally began, and you tossed to it live on the air, and you described it to me as about happening, 5 minutes into his address. And I think for all of us, frankly, when we hear the news and then we see it and we watch it, yeah, it's stunning. But when the news starts to settle in and you realize that that was so close to hitting the right temple on the former president's head, and that could have been a kill shot. And there were some reports suggesting that the shooter was outside the perimeter where this rally was being held. We haven't confirmed that. Some people talking about him being on top of a rooftop. Maybe that's true, but the investigation is going to play out when it plays out. And we'll get that information to you as quickly as we can, but not before we confirm it ourselves. There's a lot of stuff flying around social media. As you can imagine, X travels fast. Okay, so we'll try and keep up as best we can. But to help try and answer some of these questions. Retired ATF Deputy Assistant Director Peter Forcelli is with us now. And, sir, thank you for your time and good evening to you. You have watched the video. Can you take us through what you see in that 2-minute period?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Bill. Yeah, look, President Trump is incredibly lucky to be alive. Had that bullet been a couple inches to the right, if it aimed to the right, it would have taken his life, I have no doubt. Keep in mind, the bullet travels faster than sound. So he felt that injury before he would have heard that first shot go off. Obviously, he dropped to the ground. The Secret Service did a phenomenal job of surrounding him. And think of the courage that takes, too, for these Secret Service agents to put themselves between a gunman who is shooting at the president and the president. And then if you notice, while he's down on the ground, you heard one of the Secret Service operators say the shooter is down. And it's at that point where they start to stand former President Trump up, but still maintaining a perimeter around him to protect him for just in the event, I would imagine, there was another shooter. But terrifying. It's very sad that someone lost their life there. Incredibly lucky that President Trump did not lose his. And Secret Service did a phenomenal job. Again, not just in protecting the president, but in eliminating a threat rather quickly. So it could have been a much worse result, especially in such a crowd where other people could have been injured. So we got off lucky, hate to say.
Yeah, I mean, Peter, how tough is it with these large political rallies, in this case, often outside, thousands of people there? How tough is it? What kind of a headache, sort of a nightmare is it for law enforcement trying to get that scene completely sanitized, at least as close as you can from a threat?
No, it's very difficult. And as Paul Morrow said earlier on the show, look, I was with NYPD before I was with ATF, where we handled large crowds all the time. And oftentimes what you'll do is you'll magnetometer people coming in and out. The Secret Service does that. They have the uniform division that often screens people coming to these events. But it's very difficult because you have so many moving parts and so many people. And, again, my understanding from what I'm hearing from my sources is similar to what you're hearing, that the person was not inside of the event, but firing from a rooftop, which does make sense when you hear that it was the counter snipers that actually eliminated this threat. That's their job, is to take out a sniper, hence the term counter sniper. But they did a phenomenal job, and my prayers for President Trump and his family, and for the family of the person who lost their life there.
Yeah, Peter, just one last quick question here. It's kind of hard to say right now. How long is this investigation going to take?
Well, it might take some time. Obviously, once they have the identity of the shooter, they're going to want to look at what he's done in the past. They want to look at his social media. They're going to try to find out where that firearm came from, who purchased that firearm for him. Did he purchase it for himself? It could go on for several months, and it will probably be worked jointly with the FBI taking the lead, because it was an assassination attempt on a former president, and Secret Service providing support along with other federal agencies within their areas of expertise.
Well, they know who this person is, obviously. Shooter's dead. Will they tell us tonight?
I think they should, but again, it's going to depend on where that investigation takes them. Again, because they want to find out if there were other parties involved, and disclosing the name of the shooter could potentially cause other people to go into hiding. So it's going to depend on where the investigation takes them, I believe.
Thank you, sir. Peter Forcelli, thanks for jumping on. Really appreciate it. With Fox Digital, Brooke Singman reports this. The former Attorney General, Bill Barr, is quoted as saying, "The Democrats have to stop their grossly irresponsible talk about Trump being an existential threat to democracy. He is not." That statement from Bill Barr into Fox Digital just now.
Yeah, let's take that to our Fox News contributors. Guy Benson and Charlie Hurt. Guy, you heard what the former AG said, like, we got to turn down the temperature.
Yeah, and that's going to be, I think, a theme that is going to play out and be repeated in different ways in the coming days. We're still trying to wait to get all the facts in. I think that is always smart to do, but on its face, this is horrifying. As we were just replaying the incident in real time, several seconds into the chaos and the melee, there's a blood-curdling scream from a woman that just chills you to the core. The terror, the horror, and this at a campaign rally for a man running for president. This has no place in our country. And just to zoom out for a moment, think about the volatility that we already faced in American politics, with all the legal issues surrounding President Trump, the type of rhetoric that the former Attorney General just alluded to in that statement that we read. the turmoil on the Democratic side of the aisle with their likely nominee and some of the drama there, we were heading into a convention season, a summer season before a presidential election that was already simmering at about an 8 or 9 out of 10 on the temperature scale. And now we have, on top of it, what very much appears to be an assassination attempt against a former president of the United States and the leading candidate for president in the country right now. So I think it's totally appropriate for people to be calling for prayers for the former president, his family, and all those affected by what happened today. I think if you're the praying type, it might be in order to pray for our country right now, because these are dark days. And I think if we can take a collective step back and a breath and pray for our well-being as a nation, that is probably a good idea on a night like this.
Senator Josh Hawley saying there needs to be a full congressional investigation into how this could have happened. Major security breach. He's exactly right about that. I imagine the investigation, Charlie, is probably beginning right this hour.
Yes, I would think so, without a doubt. It is an extraordinary moment. You know, there are a lot of things that we don't know right at the moment, but one of the things that we do know, based on all of the available evidence right at the moment, is that this was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. And I was struck by your very powerful interview just a minute ago with Steve Scalise. And it's a very sobering reminder of how long this toxic swill has kind of been brewing in this country. And it's unacceptable. You can't have a free country of self-governance when you have violence like this. And it's, we are so lucky that we're not looking at a far graver situation for Donald Trump. Obviously, a supporter of his went out today to participate in our public politics, and apparently is dead. And that is just so unthinkable and so despicable. One other thing I think is important to note, as you pointed out, Donald Trump's, for all he knew, he was dead at that moment. Yet he took a moment to want to hold back and make sure people knew that he was okay. And to me, that is a sign of bravery and toughness and a concern for our political process in this country that is sorely needed. And I think he should be lauded for that. He is the toughest son of a gun to, I think, ever run for president.
Jake Gibson, producer at Fox News, covers the Department of Justice and many other things for us, sends this message. Urgent, shooter dead, AR recovered. Federal law enforcement source says the shooter is dead and that an AR-style rifle was recovered at the scene. That from Jake Gibson, working the story back in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, and we are hearing from Matt Reedy, who is one of our producers, who is often on the campaign trail. He's out talking with folks here in Milwaukee, where we are getting ready to start the RNC, getting their reaction to this. He talks to one man who says this: "It is a tragedy. I hate to see what this country is becoming. I personally believe that we're onto some devastating events in our future. And at the end of the day, I think Trump's just trying to make things better." Regardless of where you're coming from politically, guys, you said maybe it is time to pray for this country as a whole, for those who don't already do that, because it feels so divided. And the actions of this person today, as we get to learn more about it.
If I could here, I apologize for the interruption. Here we go. This is from Donald Trump's account, @RealDonaldTrump, and I'm going to go ahead and read it to you by way of Trump's campaign, who sends it this way and says the following. "I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all of law enforcement for their rapid response on the shooting that just took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed, and also to the family of another person that was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act can take place in our country. Nothing is known at this time about the shooter, who is now dead. I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening." He concludes in all caps, "God bless America." Exclamation point. That from Donald Trump at the medical facility now in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and my goodness, you can see, as we saw these photos, you could see his bloodied ear and that blood across his face and his cheek there as well. And one of our guests, Peter Furselli, who was on moments ago, said, based on how, guns and trajectory and sound work, he probably was hit before he even realized the sound of what he was hearing. And we saw him before he hit the ground, that he reached up to touch his ear. So as we've said repeatedly, the fact that this person was shooting at the former president of the United States, a current presidential contender, and within millimeters, centimeters, I mean, a difference. You are right there by his temple, and clearly it appears now that was the intention, was to take this man out. And what a miracle that he was not hit, that it wasn't just even a fraction of a measurement different, and you see him reacting in that moment.
Guy, Charlie, stand by. I want to go back to the scene now. Correspondent Alexis McAdams has more from people that she is talking with. There's a little bit of daylight left. The days are long this year. It's kind of nice in the summertime, but mid-July, that summer heat in Pennsylvania, must have been a remarkable day for so many tens of thousands who showed up for a rally to support a man that they want to put back in the White House. But this day is ending in a much different fashion. Alexis.
Bill, that's right. A hot day here and a humid day in Butler, Pennsylvania, where people waited for hours because they love former President Donald Trump. Everybody we talked to out here wanted to hear and, get a glimpse of him. And we got on that stage, he talked about some of his hot topics as usual during that, those rallies. There was the music playing, the excitement building, and then you heard a series of loud pops, which we're hearing from law enforcement officials was now gunshots. So I'm going to walk you this way a little bit. I want to take you here so we can talk with some of the people who were close and heard what happened and saw what happened. So you were there. You said your son was even closer to the man who ended up actually getting killed here at this rally. Tell me what you saw.
Well, we were supposed to be down there where my son was, but it was so hot and sunny that we decided to seek shade up, way up. So we weren't down where it happened, but my son was. And as soon as we heard what happened, I called him immediately, and he just said, I'm okay. He goes, I can't talk right now. And he was on the ground. And then that's all we knew. We just stayed up where we were. We were way up on top of the hill.
When you heard those pops, did you know that they were gunshots? Did you think that they were gunshots?
It took me so by surprise, but I knew that that wasn't normal. I knew something was wrong, and people were running. Instantly, people were running and screaming to get out. And we just didn't know what to do. And the first thing I did was call my son.
And your son was pretty close to that man who was shot. Yes. Did he describe kind of what it looked like? Was that man was he taken out by authorities?
He was. He said there was blood everywhere. People were splattered with blood. Yeah. And he said it's something I never wanted.
Yeah, he said he went down
see.
Instantly. Like when he got hit, he probably never knew what hit him.
And how close was your son sitting to this man who was shot?
He said he was about 6 feet away.
I think now, we were shocked too when we were up there, on the media stage, and you hear the pops. You don't really know what's going on. You try to take cover, knowing that your son was so close and could have been shot. How are you feeling?
In shock. In shock. Can't believe it that this would happen in Butler, Pennsylvania. And my son saw the shooter on the roof of that AGR building.
Walk me through what he told you about that, because we've seen, and Bill, you know that too, we've seen these reports coming in, possible, photos or pictures of people in the crowd trying to see, what was going on, where the shooter was. Where did your son see a possible gunman?
He was laying on the roof of an AGR building, not in the farm show grounds.
So where is that, let's say, when you're looking at the former president on that stage, the AGR building is how far out? Like being pretty close to that, like, are we talking about behind the stage, in front of the stage? Where is this?
It's out a little ways, yeah. It's, I don't know, 100 feet or better, a couple hundred feet.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's what we're hearing, just knowing that somebody was possibly up on a roof. These people's family members saw someone up on a roof. We know the suspected gunman at this point is dead, and police recovering evidence at this point, as well as somebody who was just here for a Trump rally ends up getting shot and killed possibly. So we're keeping an eye on these developments, Bill.
Thanks, Alexis. Good to have you, Alexis McAdams, back there in Butler, Pennsylvania. Thank you again. We'll be back with you momentarily, Shannon.
All right, let's check in with former Secret Service agent Tim Miller joining us now. Tim, this is a very difficult assignment. We thank you You and those who serve as you do voluntarily to walk into these situations and quickly act as we saw today are heroes. I mean, what is it like to plan for this, to have a protectee, and to find yourself potentially facing this situation at any moment that you're in service?
Well, I want to give kudos to the agents today. Their response was amazing. And it goes to show you that this is the premier law enforcement protective agency in the world. Now, with that said, we often knew every time we did in advance that it's impossible to fully protect the President of the United States, as we saw today. Fortunately, their quick response today resulted in a president not losing his life. And, you know, he was half an inch away from losing his life. I think when you look at the details of what they have to do every day, the advances, it really brings home that Secret Service agents must be on their game every minute of every day, because if you think of the number of stops, you think of what they have to do daily, they have to be ready. And today they were ready.
Sir, we're getting some information about how many rounds were fired. None of this has been confirmed, but some of our colleagues are reporting this on other networks about an AR-style rifle, maybe 8 rounds fired. Maybe this shooter was up to 200 or 300 yards away. If you were to imagine that based on what limited information we have, does that sound right to you?
It absolutely does. You know, the effective range of an AR is about 300 yards. And ever since 1963, the Secret Service is very concerned about anybody up on roofs. I saw some reports that people saw someone up on the roof, and if that's true, then the Secret Service has countermeasures to that. So there's a lot of questions to be answered right now. I will tell you it happens in split seconds. So 8 rounds from 300 yards, especially with, you know, the shooters, you know, actually striking at least a portion of the president, is very alarming.
Sir, thank you very much for your expertise on this historic evening and a day of tragedy for the family who lost their own loved one at that rally.
It absolutely is, and others that we understand, at least one, maybe others critically injured, and the folks there forever shocked and scarred, and many who were watching this live in our country. As we walk through this moment, we want to replay for folks who have not seen this start to finish, so you can see the reaction as the moment President Trump realizes something has gone very wrong. By his own account moments ago, he says he knew that he had to get down, that there was something terribly wrong unfolding. He heard the shots. We'll let you watch for yourself through the moment that you see this. When he lifts his fist, lets people know as he is hurried away by the Secret Service that he's going to be fine.
Take a look at what happened.
Move to spare. Hold. When you're ready, on you.
Ready?
Move.
Up.
Move. Go.
Up. Hawkeye's here. Hawkeye's here. Move to the spare. Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready.
We ready?
Down. Shooter's down.
Are we good?
Shooter's down.
Shooter's down. Are we good to move?
Shooter's down. We're good to move.
We're clear.
We're clear.
Let's move.
We're clear.
Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we got to move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, my shoes down. Get the shoe.
Watch out.
unbelievable. I didn't, this is like
We're going to go over that 2 minutes and 30 seconds for an awful long time, that video there. Statement by the U.S. Secret Service just came out 2 minutes ago. It's a long paragraph. I'm going to read it now, okay? During former President Trump's campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on the evening of July 13, at approximately 6:15 p.m., a suspected shooter fired multiple shots toward the stage from an elevated position outside of the rally venue. U.S. Secret Service personnel neutralized the shooter, who is now deceased. U.S. Secret Service quickly responded with protective measures, and former President Trump is safe. One spectator was killed, 2 spectators critically injured. This incident is currently under investigation, and the Secret Service has notified the FBI. Shannon, what clearly sticks out is that line about a suspected shooter firing multiple shots from an elevated position outside of the rally venue, which would synchronize with some of the things we've been picking up on social media about a man dead on top of a roof outside of the rally itself.
Yeah, and witnesses who were there on the scene have talked with our Alexis McAdams. I want to read, too, from Ivanka Trump saying, "Thank you for your love and prayers for my father and for other victims of today's senseless violence in Butler, Pennsylvania. I'm grateful to the Secret Service and all the other law enforcement officers for their quick and decisive actions today. I continue to pray for our country. I love you, Dad, today and always."
Wow. Jason Chaffetz, quickly to you. I've got some more information, but go ahead, Jason.
This is a catastrophic failure of the United States Secret Service. The men and women who jumped on the former president, got in between him and a would-be shooter, they're heroes. But if there was a person with a gun within proximity to take down the president of the United States, those people have got to be held accountable. They should be fired. There is no reason that a gun should be within close proximity that can shoot a former president of the United States. That's why we have the Secret Service, and they failed us today. They failed us.
Jason, thank you. Jake Gibson reports the ID is not confirmed. Federal law sources, enforcement sources, tell us the shooter's identity is still unconfirmed, and they're working on it. But first reports suggest the shooter was not carrying ID. So that is the initial report about the potential identity of the shooter. Shannon, you've got Fox News Sunday tomorrow morning. You will be on this story then. And thank you for your excellent work tonight.
You too, my friend.
All right, here's Sean.
And welcome to Hannity, and this is a Fox News alert. Today, the former president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, was the target of an apparent assassination attempt. One innocent attendee is now dead. President Trump, we are told, is alive and well and now in a safe location. The shooter, meanwhile, has been killed by U.S. Secret Service. And just breaking moments ago, President Trump's first reaction on Truth Social, quote, "I want to thank the U.S. Secret Service and all of law enforcement for their rapid response on the shooting that just took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed and also to the family of another person that was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act can take place in our country." Now, nothing is known at this time about the shooter, who is now dead. He said, "I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong in that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening. God bless America." According to the Secret Service tonight, quote, during former President Trump's campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on the evening of July 13th at approximately 6:15 p.m., a suspected shooter fired multiple shots towards the stage from an elevated position outside of the rally venue. U.S. Secret Service personnel neutralized the shooter, who is now deceased. U.S. Secret Service quickly responded with protective measures, and former President Trump is safe. One spectator was killed. 2 spectators were critically injured. This incident is currently under investigation. The Secret Service has notified the FBI. And in case you missed it, here's what went down just a few hours ago with sound. Take a listen. Take a look.
Take a look at what happened.
out to the spare.
Move to the spare. Hold. When you're ready, on you.
Ready?
Move.
Up.
Move. Go.
Up. Hawkeye's here.
Hawkeye's here, move it to the spare.
Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready.
We ready?
Down. Down.
Are we good?
Shooter's down.
Shooter's down. Are we good to move?
We're good to move.
We're clear.
We're
Let's
clear.
move.
We're
Let's
clear.
move.
We're clear.
Come on.
Let me get my shoes.
Got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we got to move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, my shoes down. My shoes.
Watch out.
All right, we have full, complete news coverage all throughout the evening tonight. Joining us now with the very latest, live from Pennsylvania, Alexis McAdams. Alexis, what's the latest on the ground?
Hi, Sean. Well, being there in that media area, in the press area, watching the former president speak, he was just getting into immigration. The excitement was building. People were clapping and cheering, yelling, "Make America Great Again." And then you heard a series of loud pops. People really didn't even have time to react. Some people did hit the ground. Then we saw the Secret Service rush in. We're talking about the federal, the state, and local agencies doing everything they could as the former president then went down, Sean, right behind that podium. Coming back up a short time later after somebody yelled, "The shooter is down," with law enforcement, and on his ear you saw some blood. So that happened so quickly, and people came out here to support the former president. They were excited to see him, and then they left with this horrible tragedy. Take a look here. We're going to pan, Sean. You can see what's going on in Butler, Pennsylvania. It's cleared out now, but for hours after that shooting, people were stuck in traffic trying to get out because it is an active crime scene. So we're trying to piece this all together, and that includes talking to witnesses like Brandon, who you said you were up there pretty close to where the former president was speaking. What exactly did you hear and what did you see?
We're all just there, looking up at the screen that he has up, and I heard a loud pop, and I thought it was like the speaker cracking. And we heard another one, and then people started screaming, and so we all just hit the ground, and I started looking around as to what was going on, and I saw one of the Secret Service guys. He was firing back. There was probably 6, 7 shots total, maybe. And then I look up in the bleachers, and people are just screaming and crying, and there's just blood everywhere. One of the guys got hit. And
knowing that somebody was hit, so now we know, obviously the former president had a graze wound to his ear. He's expected to be, he'll be okay, he says. But to know somebody who came to this Trump rally just like you that was sitting right by you doesn't get to go home tonight with their family. You said you were sitting there and you saw the man who was shot actually near his family and they were crying. What else? You went through the scene a little bit. What did you see? It sounded kind of gruesome.
Yeah, there was blood all over his family members. There was a guy up there trying to administer CPR. It all happened so quick, still trying to process everything. And we're just all down on the ground, and people down on the ground are crying. We don't know what to do. People are just screaming and crying. And then all of a sudden people started standing up, and we start walking out. And we looked on top of the AGR building, and there was Secret Service up there. They were standing around what we now know was the shooter. At that time, we really didn't know where it was coming from.
And to set this up, Sean, so when we were inside there, we're in the back with the media, and then when you could see the former president wasn't too far up from us speaking, this was all happening to his right. So this AGR building that we're talking about is the American Glass Research Building. That's at 68th and Whitestown here in Butler, so that's just outside of the ground. So it wasn't like this person entered, because we've been talking about safety and security and the Secret Service doing those pat-downs and checking bags. According to what we know right now from witnesses and the police is that this person was on a rooftop of this AGR building building, which is outside of those grounds. So then you saw the people kind of surround that building. And going back to that man, though, and his family, were people crying and were people running out after they saw someone was shot?
No, no one really started running. We just all kind of hit the ground, and people were yelling for paramedics and police to come. And there was probably 6 or 7 state troopers that just all of a sudden showed up out of nowhere, and they hauled him off the bleachers, and who was dead at that time.
Well, thanks for talking to us. I'm glad that you're okay. I'm glad your family's okay. But I think most people are still in shock. I mean, just trying to piece this all together. But it is important to point out as we look at kind of the layout of where the former president was when he was grazed by that bullet on his ear and then goes down, where this shooter was, according to investigators, was up on that roof of the AGR building outside of the farm grounds. Sean.
Alexis, great reporting. Let's go back to President Trump's statement on Truth Social. It pierced his upper right ear, is what he said. So what we're really talking about here is we're talking about maybe 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, and he was probably assassinated. That's how close this guy got from this rooftop. How far away was that rooftop where we believe the shooting took place?
I mean, pretty close. I'm going to bring you back in a little bit because you know about the layout with this AGR building. I don't really know. I mean, how close is that AGR building to where former President Trump was standing?
It's several hundred feet away.
Okay.
It was directly behind where I would have been standing. So the bullets would have been coming from, my back, just that way.
Yeah. And as you said, we're talking about 1 millimeter. I mean, to graze the former president's ear, and how many people possibly could have also been wounded here. We had heard that it sounded like from a Secret Service source, Sean, that it sounded like there was a silencer on that gun because it sounded like muffled shots, and that's why some people at first were a little slow to react because you didn't know if it was fireworks. I think people thought the speaker blew, but it was a fun and exciting atmosphere. He was working the stage. It was a typical Trump rally. I think people do think about safety and security when you go into a huge event like this, and when there's so much tension around politics, people get a little bit worried for their safety, but nobody ever thought this was going to happen from the people we've talked to, Sean.
Yeah, very clear to me as somebody who's been shooting since he's 10 years old. When I heard the sound over and over again, it was very clear to me that was the sound of a gunshot. And Selena Zito was on our air and confirmed that she had no doubt it was a gunshot, now obviously confirmed. Alexis, thank you. We'll check in with you later throughout the night tonight. Now, moments ago, we did hear from President Biden. He did condemn tonight's alleged assassination attempt. Take a look. This comes after a fear campaign filled with nonstop vitriol, hysteria against Trump from both Joe Biden, Jill Biden, many other Democrats. There's going to be plenty of time to get into that in the days and weeks ahead, and I'm sure that will be a passionate debate. First, now we go for more and the latest update, our own Peter Ducey. Peter, what's the latest where you are?
Sean, the latest is that President Biden says from Rehoboth Beach, where he's vacationing for the weekend, he does not know enough to judge whether or not this was an assassination attempt or not. He says he has an opinion about that, but he won't share it yet. The press pool that is traveling with him on this out-of-town trip has not been told that they can go home for the night. So it's possible we will hear from him again once more information is out there. It is possible that we will just get some more written information. The president says he is trying to get in touch with Donald Trump. I reached out to a White House official. It does not sound like that has happened yet. They're going to keep us posted. And President Biden, the big point that he was making while he was denouncing this action is he said Trump had a rally that should have been able to go off peacefully without any problem. He said the idea that there's political violence in America like this is just not appropriate. He's asking everybody to condemn it. A few minutes after this happened, I phoned a very high-ranking White House official to ask what exactly was going on at the White House, what the National Security Council might know about this, or what would be happening. And this official hadn't heard about it yet. And so this isn't the kind of thing where, even though it is such a potentially destabilizing political action, it's not like everybody at the White House just gets a buzz on their phone that it happened. They find out about this stuff the same way that we do. And we go to a lot of events like this. Trump as president, Trump as a candidate, Biden as president, Biden as a candidate. And it's very notable that they're saying now the shooter came from outside the perimeter, because to get in, everybody has to empty their pockets. You can't have a big bag. If you have a small bag, it gets searched by the Secret Service. Everybody is wanted, and then they go in. But typically at an event like this, they do have, you've got the protective detail that you can see on the screen right now around Donald Trump. But there are many, many layers of security. There are state police. There will be a county SWAT team. There are others in the parking lot, on the roads outside, looking at something like a building with a sight line, it seems like, to the stage. And so that is a big part of the reason why there are already congressional requests to investigate the Secret Service response here. James Comer just sent out a statement that said he has already reached out to the Secret Service, asking the director to let them know exactly how this happened. So we might hear some more from President Biden. I also was in touch with some folks from the campaign. They're going to, for the time being, suspend all outgoing political communication from Wilmington. So anything nasty about Trump for the next couple days, it sounds like, is going to come down. And they are in the process right now on Saturday night of reaching out to TV stations and networks to try to take down political ads that are scheduled to run, pro-Biden political ads. They obviously, before this happened, the Biden people are having a bad week domestic politics-wise. They are spending tens of millions of dollars on these ads trying to make it better, and they've decided that it is not appropriate at the moment to run any of that stuff. And maybe that signals a change in the president's messaging to come, but it's too soon to know.
Yeah. You know, Peter, there's going to be a lot of questions in the days and weeks ahead. Certainly, we both agree with that. You heard Alexis's report, and Alexis talked about, okay, the shooter was outside of the perimeter, but it was adjacent to the area in which President Trump was speaking, and you have to wonder, how come that wasn't secured? How come somebody was able to get on that roof? I know a lot of people in the Secret Service. They're very good people in the Secret Service. I want to be fair to all of them, and we saw them act so quickly today, and we were so grateful for that. But certainly that is a question that will be asked in the days to come. As far as the political rhetoric, being called evil in recent days, just yesterday Joe had ratcheted up his record. There'll be plenty of time to talk about all of that, and certainly that will be part of the political process because it's gotten out of hand. There's no doubt about it. Do you think the White House is taking a closer look at that tonight?
Well, we'll find out as soon as tomorrow, because President Biden is supposed to resume some political travel. He's going to go, at least the schedule as of a couple hours ago, he's supposed to go to the LBJ Library in Austin, Texas to give remarks, and then he was going to go out to Las Vegas for a couple days to talk to various unions that are out there as he tries to stabilize his presidential campaign. If they start to pull those events down tomorrow for the week ahead, that would be a signal that things are really going to start changing. And to your point, Sean, about the Secret Service response here, when you go to an event like this, there are the Secret Service agents in suits like the ones that you see in this clip that we are running of the president being saved. But there are also a lot of Secret Service agents. They have counter snipers that go there, and their job is basically to figure out where a sniper would be at an event. They know where the podium is going to be, and they're using binoculars. They go to things like an adjacent rooftop a couple hundred yards away and make sure that the coast is clear. I'm not in Pennsylvania for this event, and so I don't know exactly what the protocol was today, but typically that is the kind of thing that you see. They do have contingencies in place to prevent exactly this. So it's very, very... something went very wrong with the preliminary planning of this event.
Yeah, especially because it was outside the perimeter, but very close to the venue and on a rooftop. Obviously, that would be one of the places I would imagine that they'd first be looking at. Peter, stand by. We'll get back to you throughout the evening tonight. Thank you. We appreciate it. Moments ago, former Attorney General Bill Barr, who has sometimes been at odds with President Trump, told Fox News Digital, quote, the Democrats have to stop their grossly irresponsible talk about Trump being an existential threat to democracy. He is not. Here now with reaction to the horrific events of the day, America's Newsroom co-anchor Bill Hemmer, along with fellow co-host and co-host of The Five, friends of mine, both Dana Perino. Looks like both of you guys are in Milwaukee tonight. There's two things that really stand out, and I did speak to somebody that was with the president in the hospital, and I can report this part, is that the president walked into the hospital. He was fine. He was in good humor, in good health. He had a full understanding of what he had just been through. One thing a lot of people hadn't factored in is all the Secret Service agents, Dana, that had jumped on him. And the other thing that the person noted in typical Donald Trump fashion, and I knew him many years before he ever ran for president, is he got up and he wanted to show this audience that he was okay and he was going to still fight. Quintessential Trump in many ways, and you got to admire that spirit.
So I was on a flight on my way here to Milwaukee when all of this happened, and the guy behind me, I heard him start cursing, and I didn't understand what was going on and quickly caught up. So I've just landed, and so this is my first chance to comment. Thank God he is okay. I'm very, very upset for the supporters of him who were injured or even lost their lives. I do think that President Trump's instincts were absolutely incredible. He decided to show everybody that was there, not just, he knew in the moment that he was, all eyes of the world are on him. And he showed the world strength. And it was like watching a warrior president. And this country, obviously we have a lot of divisions. Obviously we have a lot of problems. There are probably 1,000,001 questions about how this happened, etc. But the other thing that he did, Sean, is his instincts were to thank the Secret Service. And I know just from my experience that that is always the thing that President Bush would say. And he, of course, put out a statement right away, calling this a cowardly act and thanking God that Trump was okay. And it's so good to hear that he walked into the hospital, but his instincts were, one, to fight, but also to thank the Secret Service. And there will be a huge investigation. But we also have a big campaign ahead of us. Obviously, he is going to continue to fight. There will be maybe some changes that have to happen at these rallies in order to protect him, because I was thinking, Sean, just 2 nights ago, Barron Trump, his 18-year-old son, was on stage with him. And I'm sure that the family is right now thinking, 1, we are grateful that he's okay. 2, we are grateful that he wants to continue to fight for the country. But 3, they must be extremely worried, Sean, and obviously have a right to be.
Dana, you have a little experience this. Look, I'm not comparing at all what happened to President Bush, but you were there. It wasn't an assassination attempt in any way, but you were there that day, that moment, when not 1 but 2 shoes were thrown at then President Bush. And I think you got injured yourself in the process there as he ducked this way and that way and showed great agility at the time. Obviously not an assassination attempt, but it just shows when any president... Yeah, go ahead, what?
I just said, you're right that it could have been. There was also another time on May 9th, 2006, I believe, in Tbilisi, Georgia, where it wasn't until afterwards that, as the deputy press secretary, I found out that there was a grenade that did not go off that was just feet from where he was speaking. And by the grace of God, it did not go off. So it is very dangerous. And the other thing, Sean, I would say is that when I would ask President Bush about polarization in the country, he would remind me that when he graduated college in '68, the country was literally in the streets fighting each other. And he said, we have a long way to go until then. And of course, we had the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan. That seems perhaps a little bit different. But political violence is, we're not complete strangers to it. But this is new for our country. And it feels like the nation needs a circuit breaker. Like, we have to reset and restart, and I'm hoping that we can do that in the coming days.
And then, of course, we had the case of Gerald Ford as well. I mean, you bring in a lot of historical context, rightly so, in here. Ivanka Trump has just come out with a statement. Thank you for your love and prayers for my father and for the other victims of today's senseless violence in Butler, Pennsylvania. I am grateful to the Secret Service and all other law enforcement officers for their quick, decisive actions today. I continue to pray for our country. You know, Bill, this is not a story any of us ever want to cover about any president. This is not Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative at all in any way. But the rhetoric certainly has become hot and heated in the country, and there certainly is almost unbridled hatred on the hard left for President Trump. That will be examined in the days ahead. As we look forward to where you are in Milwaukee and the week ahead, do you see any potential changes? And I would expect we're probably going to see changes going forward as it relates to whether or not there are going to be outdoor events like this for President Trump. He loves to do his rallies.
Sean, is all great points, and a bit premature at the moment, but you're right about the rallies, and they'll be second guessed, and at some point the president will get back out there because, I mean, you just saw this tonight. I think two things immediately, then I'll come back to Milwaukee. I think the iconic images that America and the world are watching through this 2-minute and 30-second video clip is extraordinary. And all the still photographers who, you know, Sean, from these rallies are there in the front row, and they're looking up at the stage, so they're looking up at the president at the time. And to see this history captured, and I don't know what he said when he came up from the podium. But we heard on the microphone, he said, let me get my shoes, let me get my shoes. I think he said it 3 times. I think he's saying fight. That's just me reading his lips, fight, a couple times. And Dana's exactly right. His instincts for the moment were to let people know that he's still standing. That's one point. The other point is this investigation already knows, whether they've told us or not, that they could stand at that podium where that stage is in Butler, Pennsylvania, and they can look straight out at the rooftop of this building, where many people suspect, and based on what the Secret Service statement came out, that this was a shooter who came from outside the perimeter. You can, Sean, you can probably see a direct line 200 or 300 yards away where you need to be on the lookout. Now, Dana and I were discussing this interview that's circulating out there that the BBC has. Now, we have not spoken with this man, but he attended the rally, and he told the BBC that he saw someone on a rooftop. He told the police about it, and in his words, they did nothing. Now, that's his story. I'm sure that this gentleman right now is being interviewed by the Secret Service, by the FBI, and he's going to be a big part of this investigation. Let's see where that story goes. As for Milwaukee, Sean, yeah. I can tell you already, security's tight in downtown Milwaukee. They have an established perimeter, and we're 48 hours from this convention kicking off. Keep in mind, the convention's one thing. The protests outside are another. So police, sheriff's deputies, the Secret Service, National Guard, they have to figure out a way to balance all of this and keep it safe in Milwaukee for the next, well, what is it, Dana? 6 days? Yeah. Starting now.
Yeah, you know, Bill, as I listened to you, you talked about that BBC report. I saw the same report, and it's chilling if, in fact, there was a warning given ahead of time about somebody seeing somebody on a roof. And then, of course, you got to wonder, I'm looking at all of these people behind the president. I'm sure all the people in the audience, all of them have, you know, so many of them had their phones going, and they were videotaping President Trump as this moment happened. And I would imagine in the hours and days ahead, we're going to get a lot of different angles of all of this, and that certainly will be valuable to a full investigation as to what happened here now that we know that the shooter in this case was dead. And then you think of just how close they got here. As President Trump said, they pierced his ear. You're talking maybe about 1 millimeter, maybe 2. And we'd be talking about an assassination tonight, not an assassination attempt. Dana.
That is it's so chilling, and I think it will take all of us some time to actually process it. Right now, of course, we're trying to report the news as quickly as possible, but that deeper feeling of, oh my gosh, like he almost he could have died right there in front of everyone. And you think about, Sean, even, for example, the big political violence that was international in scope, right? 9/11, the attacks there. And you have so many stories of people who will say, well, I was supposed to be on that flight. I decided to take a later one, or I changed my flight at the last minute, or I happened to miss my flight, whatever it was. Like, there are so many of those stories. This story, and it will be the political shock of certainly my lifetime. I hope that this is never ever happens again. I think the other thing is, Sean, there was a lot of consternation for the family of RFK Jr. because of what happened to his father and the political violence there. And there was a request for him to get Secret Service protection earlier. And as a former president, you might not have enough security. That will probably change as well going forward. And we need good men and women to continue to go into the Secret Service. It's an amazing job.
Well, I could not believe that request was denied. And I remember saying, this man lost his father and his uncle, and he is a presidential candidate, and he does deserve Secret Service protection. And I was shocked that was denied. Remember, there was even a proposal to take Secret Service protection, and I'll throw this over to Bill, away from Donald Trump as part of, quote, retribution against Donald Trump, which I thought was insane. Again, that's the political side of it, Bill.
Yeah, and Sean, listen, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be run back now that have been said in recent days or weeks or even months, and it's not going to be a flattering picture, which again, I think is going to remind us to find a way to lower the temperature. Joe Biden can start that. He said he's going to talk to Donald, in his words, Donald this evening. In all likelihood, we'll see whether or not that happens. I imagine the former president would take that phone call. And then Joe Biden also said, I might see you again later tonight. So I would anticipate perhaps another statement from President Biden this evening in Rehoboth, Delaware. With regard to the president, I don't know where he pops up, but we read the statement. But he's going to, because we saw him, fists clenched.
And you might even see him
standing
tonight.
Up. Yeah, correct. Yeah, and we'll wait for that, for that moment.
I think that will be very iconic, as Dana pointed out, and Dana, I'll throw it to you. I think that picture, and knowing him as well as I do, and knowing him for as many years, almost 30 years now that I've known him, I know for a fact that he wanted to project that strength. That is who he is. It's in his DNA, Dana.
Yes, and the other thing I wanted to tell you is that maybe if they could just rerun, I know we've seen it a lot, but of the moment when the shots are fired, one of the things that's pretty incredible about his instincts as well, aside from wanting to reassure people that he was okay and show people that he was going to continue to fight, is that he immediately had the presence of mind to get down below the secure barricades, right, so that he would be, the armored barricades, so that he would be protected. The Secret Service obviously helps him there as well. So you do have that immediately, that instinct, and you think about, here he is, he's giving a huge speech, he's about to announce a vice presidential candidate, he's got a lot of things on his mind, and yet he knew immediately to follow the instructions that he had been given. And I think that's pretty remarkable, too, just to think of the presence of mind of somebody who has so much going on, and he knew immediately what had happened.
Yeah, there was a statement that came out from Secretary Mayorkas, Homeland Security, Sean. It kind of goes to the question you were asking about lowering the temperature. Here's the quote. We're engaged with President Biden. We're engaged with former President Trump and their campaigns. We're taking every possible measure to ensure their safety and security, maintaining the security of the presidential candidates and the campaign events is one of our department's most vital priorities. So we'll see where that statement goes. Already there are calls from James Comer and the Republican House side, according to our Chad Pergram just moments ago, that he wants to meet with the Secret Service early next week and get this investigation going ASAP.
Yeah, he did say, I thank the brave Secret Service members who put their lives at risk to protect President Trump, and for the American patriots in the audience who helped innocent victims. Political violence in all forms is un-American, unacceptable. And then he did add, as you rightly point out, Bill Hemmer, there are many questions and Americans demand answers. I have already contacted the Secret Service for a briefing, and I'm also calling on the Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheadle, to appear for a hearing, and they will send a formal invitation soon. Dana Perino, Bill Hemmer, thank you both. We're going to check back in with you later on as our coverage continues. But first, joining us now, Dave McCormick. He was in the front row. He was at President Trump's rally tonight, sitting there when this shooting started. He's also the Republican Senate candidate going up against incumbent Senator Casey. Dave, wish, of course, we had you on under better circumstances. You had a front row seat, literally, to what happened. Tell us what you saw.
Hey, Sean, how are you? Well, you know, I had met President Trump a little bit earlier when he first arrived, and he had come out on the stage and had actually announced and asked me to come up on the stage. And then he said, no, hold off. I'll have you up here a bit later. And then within a minute or two after that, we heard these shots. And it was almost in slow motion, a series of shots. It seemed like 7 or 8. And the president obviously went down and had the Secret Service covering him. And then, as you said, kind of rose and had the Secret Service as a phalanx around him, and you see him putting out his fist in both defiance and reassurance, and some in the crowd even chanting at that point USA. And then over my shoulder, I realized that someone else had been hit, and unfortunately, someone behind me had been in the stands and had been shot, and it looked like he was very seriously wounded. There were his people next to him were trying to treat him, but there was a lot of blood. And so you have the entire 15,000 people, many of them on their knees, down because we didn't know if the shooting was over. We didn't know if there was one shooter or two shooters. And the president, showed real strength and composure and reassurance as the Secret Service moved him out. And eventually the crowd dissipated, but we really didn't know what was going on. It was very chaotic, as you might imagine. But it was clear that somebody, at least one person, maybe more, had been hurt seriously.
To be very clear, as I have listened and watched this 2.5-minute video over and over again, Dave, it was very clear to me there was no ambiguity in terms of what that sound was. Selena Zito, who I know you know very well, well-known in Pennsylvania for her politics, and God bless the people of Pennsylvania. I hear that there was a lot of heroism on the ground. We'll hear these stories in the days to come. But there was no doubt in your mind what you heard was a gunshot. Selena said there was no doubt in her mind.
Yeah, I mean, certainly after the first pop, then there were several pops in succession. It was clear that it was a weapon. It was clear it was a gun. And frankly, I couldn't tell exactly where it was coming from. It certainly seemed like it was coming from his left, but I also thought there was even a possibility of multiple shooters. And it was very unclear, but it was clear it was at least one shooter, and it was a semi-automatic, weapon where you showed one shot after another. And it was clear that it was obviously directed at the president, as evidenced by the fact that the first round just barely hit him. And so it was clear it was an attempt on his life, and it was ultimately one that unfortunately took the lives of others.
Yeah, it's very scary, and not something that is common in Butler, PA, your home state, no. Your home area. Dave McCormick, thank you. We appreciate you being with us, and we'll have you back on, I'm sure, soon. All right, here with more reaction, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. We've been friends a long time, Mr. Speaker. I was the MC the night you became Speaker of the House in 1994, in that historic election. You've been through a lot of tough elections over the years. They're all tough elections. This is a pretty divided country at this time. And I just wanted to get your thoughts, more than anything else, beyond being a speaker, and a great speaker I believe you were. You were the last speaker to balance the budget, not once, but I think it was 2 years in a row, maybe 3. You're a historian. From a historical perspective, we have had assassination and assassination attempts before. That's clearly what happened here tonight. And it looks like this shooter came within a millimeter or two of an assassination tonight. And it's shocking the core of a nation as well. That in an adjacent rooftop that this can happen. What's your overall view and your overall initial thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that we had a little bit of time. I was very emotional earlier. I'm not sure I could have done television because I've known Trump for about 30 years. So I'm watching a personal friend get shot in front of me. I mean, it was a very intimate moment for millions of Americans. And it was a providential moment. If he had turned to look at that big screen, and when he was turned, the bullet would have hit him here. When he turned back, it hit him here. That's how close he came to being killed. And I think we need to understand that this was providential, and he reacted appropriately. But I also will tell you, he has been vilified by Joe Biden and the Democrats and the left wing more than any president since Abraham Lincoln. And this was a political act. It was a deliberate act. And as you know, because we've talked about it off air, I've said for 4 months that when all the legal baloney fails and when they begin to realize he is going to win, that violence is the next thing because they're that desperate. And I think we need to understand, people in this country have got to decide, are we going to be Americans and talk with each other as Americans, or are we going to become two bitterly divided factions? And right now, if you read what Joe Biden said last night, he's clearly in the bitterly divided side. If he has to totally split this country in order to try to retain office, he'll, at least through last night, he'll say anything no matter the consequences. This is a very, very dangerous moment. And I also have to say, I think the President Trump's courage, and here I echo what his son Eric said, his courage at walking off with the bleeding and putting up his fist and saying fight, to remind the crowd that he was going to go on, and as our champion, he wanted us to go on with him. I thought that'll go down in history, and that will help define who Donald J. Trump is.
You know, I'm listening, and it just, I've known him 30 years like you have, Mr. Speaker, and I had a lot of the same emotions that you had at the time. And then when you point out very vividly and very accurately how close he was to being assassinated tonight, it is chilling. And this should transcend all politics.
And yeah, and remember that this is a Biden administration which, as you pointed out, has refused to protect Robert F. Kennedy Jr. even when his father and his uncle were assassinated. This is the Democrats in the House actually introduced a bill to strip Donald Trump of Secret Service protection. I mean, these people are crazy, and they are willing to do virtually anything. And tonight we were winded. This is not a game. This is not just politics. This is history. And the history of the United States will be written in the next few weeks between having a huge victory to bring us together and gradually disintegrating into a country that's at war with itself.
Yeah. You know, it really is funny, and I kind of have an ongoing joke with the president. For whatever reason, I'll say to him, kidding around, when we're just talking as friends and it's not in a professional capacity, I say, you know, God loves Donald Trump. As perfect as you are. It's sort of a joke that we had. But in many ways, you know, this is too eerily close, too scary to something that could have been so tragic for our nation.
Well,
and
we should include the whole Trump family in our prayers.
Amen.
Because
Agreed.
all of them
They've been through a lot.
How close this is.
Yeah, very well said. Mr. Speaker, appreciate you as always. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Yeah. We turn now to our next guests, who were 4 rows behind Donald Trump during tonight's shooting. Robert Razzano and Thomas Lepore. Thank you both for being with us. Robert, let's start with you and get your take. 4 rows behind. What did you see?
Sean, you know, it was just a really surreal moment. You know, just 10, 15 minutes prior, we're sitting there, we're watching former President Trump, you know, give a great speech. The crowd was electric despite, you know, the heat, the weather. You know, we saw him come out to God Bless America. And it was just a great moment. You know, the crowd was just really happy to hear him and see him and be there. And, you know, then all of a sudden, mayhem, you know, ensued. And we heard probably 3 to 4 shots ring out. And, you know, most of the crowd it hit the ground after that. You know, we heard several more shots ring out that sounded, you know, a lot more powerful. we assumed that it was, you know, Secret Service because they were a lot closer. And then, you know, we looked up, and you could see in the stands that there were several bodies, unfortunately, that were on the ground. There was a good deal of blood, and it looked like law enforcement was carrying a body out. You know, we weren't sure, you know, who it might have been. But the next thing that I knew, Sean, was we looked up and we saw the president. He stood proud. Secret Service had helped him up, and he pumped his fist at the crowd. And, you know, the crowd went nuts. You know, we started chanting USA. And, you know, there was a sense of relief, I think, that overcame us because we were just happy that, you know, President Trump was okay.
Yeah, it really is. And let me get the take of Thomas. Thomas, tell us what you saw and if it was any different. And I do appreciate both of you. I guess you were both in row 4, Thomas. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct. Before I get started, obviously my thoughts and prayers go out to the Trump family and the innocent bystanders who got hit today as well. It's very disturbing. We were only, you know, 4 roads back from President Trump. The crowd was awesome. You know, it was 90 degrees all day. We stood outside for, you know, 6, 7, you know, 8 hours waiting to see him. And it's when he comes out, it's unmatched. There's no one like him. It's electric. We love it. And it's very disappointing what happened. You know, we have a group text that we talk about, you know, a lot of political things, and we had this, we had this in our back of our mind, like this is our last attempt to take him out, and it happened, you know, 5 rows in front of us, which is very shocking and disturbing. I'm just glad he's okay, but again, I'm very hurt that innocent bystanders had to. You know, or they're not coming home to their families tonight. It's disturbing, and it shouldn't happen in this country.
Let me ask you, when this happened and you saw the injured people in front of you and you saw what had happened to the president, you know, what was the reaction of the other people in the crowd? Robert, I'll ask you first.
You know what, Sean? I think that for the most part, people were stunned. There was just, I think, a sense of shock that came over everyone. You know, I know for you know, my personal sense was, you know, we're in a fishbowl, you know, and you start to hear gunshots and you don't know where they're coming from. And, you know, you're thinking about yourself at that point. Obviously, you know, you're thinking about the president, but, you know, I have 2 small children, you know, and that was the first thing that came to my mind was, you know, I just want to make it out of here to see my kids.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes down to that, Thomas, in the end, right? You go to a political rally, the last thing you expect is what happened tonight.
Yeah, it's just concerning that there was a security breach to me. I don't understand how that happens in this day and age, but again, this is, you know, the climate we're in right now. We need to do better as a country. We need to, you know, not be as divided as we are. And we need to understand that there are different sides. That's awesome. That's great. People have their own opinion, their own voice. But at the end of the day, you know, we're all human. We all have family members. We're all loved by others. And this type of violence is just not accepted. It shouldn't be accepted in this country. And I hope going forward, it's not. And to me now, like, again, with what happened with Trump falling down again up and pumping his fist, he's immortal to me now. I will support him to the end, and I will fight for him to the end. But violence like this is unacceptable. And I just thank God that more people weren't injured. But again, you know, 1 is too many in the situation.
You know, kind of amazing. You guys go to a rally, and I'm sure the last thing both of you, Robert and Thomas, expected tonight, but we do appreciate you being with us. Joining us now, my friend and colleague, Martha MacCallum. Martha, you know, we cover a lot of stories in the course of our business on a daily basis. This is not a story anybody ever wants to cover. Let's get your reaction to the events as they've been unfolding now the last few hours.
Sean, it's good to be with you. You know, like all Americans, when I got this news that the president had been shot and was bleeding near his ear, it goes right through you. And it has been 43 years since March of 1981 when, as Americans, we all heard that the president had been shot. And you think of those images of Ronald Reagan being surrounded by Secret Service, being essentially shoved into the back of the vehicle and rushed to the hospital. And we haven't seen that in a very long time. And I think as a country, we got to a point where we thought, well, assassinations are something of the 80s and the 60s, you know, that isn't something that happens anymore. And I thought that Newt Gingrich said it very effectively. I mean, you watch the lean of President Trump's head slightly to the side, and you see that that bullet grazed the side of his head. We have been through a lot over the last few weeks with this election cycle and the deep concerns about the condition of the current president. I shudder to think what it would be like tonight, Sean, if the nation was now dealing with what we could have been dealing with here tonight. And it is a moment, I think, for all of us to stop and think about where we are in this country and the danger of putting yourself in this position. And just one other quick thing. I think absolutely it is extraordinary. Would any of us, if I thought I had just been shot, you know, the idea of standing up and instantly wanting to signal to the entire crowd that he was okay and that he was fighting, pumping his fist in the air, there's not too many humans that are made this way. And that is an absolutely extraordinary and historic moment that I think will live for a very long time. And listening to those guests, I think that the passion and commitment that people who support President Trump will have for him, you know, is only it's exponentially increased, likely, because of tonight, Sean.
You know, having known him and have a personal relationship also with him, even prior to him getting into politics, Martha, I can tell you it is in his DNA. I promise you, at some point, I will have a conversation with him, and he will talk about, how'd you like how I got up? And he'll tell the whole story. But
I do not doubt it one bit.
He will, and he will tell that story. And, you know, obviously those of us that know him on a personal level, and those that don't, there's another side of him that I often said to him, I wish other people knew about him. But that person that got up and telegraphed to the world, he's strong, he's fine, he's okay. And the entire world is watching right now.
Absolutely.
What is going on here and paying very close attention. And they've been paying close attention, frankly, since that last debate. And we know that a lot of leaders around the world have been weighing in on American politics and the cognitive state of President Biden, et cetera. But they're watching this, too, and they're watching it really closely. And, you know, America has always been the leader of the free world, and I feel so strongly that we can't abdicate that role. But that was the instinctive part of Donald Trump that I've always known, that would get up and let that crowd know, and also really letting the world know, because they're watching. He's strong, and you know what? You're not going to take him down. And he's also somebody that's been through more than most people, I think, could ever take in any one given life in terms of stress and pressure, and holds up pretty well.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's the other thing I thought of. I thought of him coming down the escalator and the night that he won, right? There was a lot of joy in the Trump campaign in 2016 because it was like, oh, you know, he's having fun, and, you know, the apprentice and the real estate magnate. And then when he won, the tone changed on a dime, right? I mean, it was a full-on attempt, essentially, to take him down, to find ways to knock him out of office, that went on really for 4 years. He was constantly handling incoming, not in the way he saw it tonight, that's for sure. I use that as an expression prior to what we saw now. But no one, regardless of what people's opinions are of the former president, I think it's tough to find anyone who has handled more onslaught than President Trump. And I think that you're so right about how foreign leaders look at the last several weeks, and that signal of him, you know, lying down and then standing up and pumping his fist in front of the American flag is going to be something that resonates around China, resonates around Iran, North Korea. and Russia as well, Sean.
Martha McCallum, as always, thank you. We appreciate you joining us tonight.
Sean. Good to be with you.
We do have a statement from Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, and there's at times have been a little bit of a contentious relationship, and very gracious on his part. All Georgians join our fellow Americans in mourning the innocent life taken today. And let me pause as I say this. We have not thought enough about those families that have lost loved ones. They went to a political rally today, and they're not going home. And our prayers are with all of them. Governor Kemp goes on, and he says, and the innocent life taken today at the Pennsylvania rally, and praying for the attendees still receiving care. I am deeply thankful for the Secret Service's swift action to keep former President Trump and rally-goers safe. The attempt on former President Trump's life is horrific and contrary to everything our nation stands for. In America, we settle political disagreements peacefully at the ballot box, not through heinous acts of violence. We must stand together to condemn what happened today and remind ourselves that regardless of how we vote or what we believe, we are all Americans. So if more statements as they come in, we will get them to you. An interesting story you're about to hear. Joining us now, former White House physician, Congressman Ronnie Jackson. Congressman Jackson, you had relatives that were in the crowd tonight, and tell us what happened.
Yes, Sean. So my nephew was at the event tonight, and they were in the friends and family pen, and they heard the shots, and everybody dropped to the ground. And I don't know if you guys have the picture or not, but he was grazed in the neck. A bullet crossed his neck, cut his neck, and he was bleeding.
This is your
he got up.
Congressman, this is your nephew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is my nephew. They were there. I'd set them up. They went to the rally. They were in the friends and family pen, which was just to the president's right, down a little bit lower on the left on the screen, but to the president's right in the line of fire. And they heard shots coming in. Apparently, there was someone also that were 4 or 5 rows behind them that was critically injured. Whenever he was shot, they realized that a bullet had grazed his neck. My sister-in-law had encouraged him to go to the first aid tent, to the triage tent. They went to the triage tent, and when they got to the triage tent, while they were there was another member of the crowd, unfortunately, that was in the triage tent that was on a gurney in the tent that had a devastating wound, had a critical wound to the head, that was dead. So. I mean, just a horrific experience.
Well, let's talk about what the president did say about his injury. And I ask you not as a congressman, but as a medical doctor. I was shot with a bullet. It pierced the upper part of my right ear. We have gone over that head turn that everybody's been focused on, Dr. Jackson. And you could see, had that turn not taken place from the angle that I see, that probably would have hit him right in the head. He probably would have been assassinated based on how close this got to him. We're talking about 1 millimeter or 2, and this would be a discussion about an assassination, not an assassination attempt. He said he knew immediately something was wrong in that he heard a whizzing sound, shots, and he immediately felt the bullet ripping through his skin. Talked about much bleeding and realized immediately what was happening. He very quickly dropped to the ground. All these other guys jumped on him, and I'm sure that in and of itself was not exactly a comfortable moment for anybody, but God bless those men for putting their lives on the line and covering him and protecting him the way they did. When you talk about, I mean, life is really, in this case, I don't even know if it's an inch. Is it a millimeter? You tell me.
Sean, it's millimeters. That is as close as you get to dying. I mean, that bullet, if he had turned just a little bit, would have entered his head. And if it had entered his head, it would have crossed through his brain, and he would have been dead. This is the closest you get to dying. And I just want to tell you a couple things, Sean. First off, I know his detail. And he has an unbelievable Secret Service detail. They are some of the most dedicated Secret Service agents I've ever been around. I've got some serious questions about Secret Service leadership tonight, but I don't have any questions about his detail. His detail is the best they're the best that's out there. And I want to say I have never, Sean, ever been prouder of my president tonight. When he got up and he had blood on his head and he shook his fist, Unbelievable. Sean.
I know him so well. That was a projection of strength that I think will symbolize this event as we see it through the prism of history. It's hard in the moment to see that. We've had other moments in history. Ronald Reagan famously saying, for example, before they operated after he had been shot, "I hope you're all Republicans." That comes to mind. Or George Bush after 9/11 with that bullhorn. The rest of the world will soon hear from us. There's a moment. Donald Trump gets up. He was just shot, and he has to put his fist in the air, not once, but twice. Dr. Jackson, thank you.
Sean.
Yeah, go ahead,
Sean,
Les.
that man's a warrior. He's a warrior.
Yeah, we appreciate.
He's a warrior, and he's fighting for all of us.
We appreciate you being with us. Joining us now is, a 30-year friend, someone also who has known Donald Trump for a long time and colleague. She hosts the Ingraham Angle, 7 o'clock Eastern, right here on Fox. Laura Ingraham is with us. Laura, we've covered a lot of stories together over the years. Not a story we thought we'd cover. Not a story we'd ever want to cover.
And now, Sean, I was in the car with one of my sons driving home from a friend's house, and I just happened to tune in, and he was speaking about immigration. I was like, oh, this is great. And the moment it went dead, the sound went dead, and you heard kind of a tussle, I looked at my son, I said, I think the president's just been shot. Like, it just... And that moment where everything starts shaking, I had to pull over. And I think at this moment, not only are we so grateful, and we've all been in deep prayer since that moment that we all heard, deep prayer across the country. And I know the president tonight is feeling the power of prayer. But we have to think about the type of rhetoric that has been used against this man, not the lawfare, the indictments, all it. But the rhetoric, the magazine covers making him look like Hitler, the language of President Biden last night in a live speech, what he said about I'm not going to even repeat it tonight. But it made me mad last night, but I'm really mad about it tonight.
Well, he was called evil
this rhetoric has got...
He was called.
You know what I'm talking about.
He was called evil by Joe Biden last week. Bill Barr said terrible things about Trump, and his post, is what it is. And other people that maybe have political disagreements, there's going to be a lot of examination of the things. You're right. I watched what was said last night, Laura. I watched it all.
Last night was disgusting.
It was disgusting.
It was disgusting.
And
to say, if Sean, to say Donald Trump is Hitler, he making him look like Hitler, rapist, all the things that they said, including last night. Right?
All right, Laura, stay right there.
What are people supposed to take from that? And we'll continue. All
right, now stay right there. You're going to be our guest at the top of the next hour because our coverage continues. But this is a Fox News Alert. It is 10 o'clock on the East Coast, and this is where we have live developments. They're still pouring in from tonight's assassination attempt against former President Donald J. Trump. Take a look at your screen. This is an image we will never forget. Donald Trump, thankfully, thank God, alive and well, but was less than an inch away from losing his life tonight. This could have been within a millimeter away of a very different program tonight. Sadly, one person attending that rally is dead tonight. Many others seriously injured. Let's be clear, our prayers are with all of them and all of their families. They went to a political rally. This shouldn't happen. The shooter, pictured here on a rooftop, was eliminated seconds after opening fire. There will be many questions in the days and weeks ahead, and questions surrounding how this individual was able to carry out this heinous act from a location, a rooftop, that close to the venue. Anyway, we're going to get back to Laura in just a second, but here with an update on the ground in Butler, Pennsylvania, where this took place earlier today. Just about 4 hours ago, on the ground is our own Alexis McAdams. Alexis.
Hi, Sean. As you said, this was a possible assassination attempt on the former president who was on that stage just trying to rally and get support here. As we talk to people out here, hey, they say this is Trump country. They love the former president. They were so excited to be here. How excited? They waited for hours, like 7 o'clock in the morning. They got here in lines buying merchandise and then slowly going in a very hot and humid day here in the swing state to hear the president speak. He was talking about inflation. He was talking about President Joe Biden and then immigration. And then as you saw, Sean, in that video, he kind of references that graph that was up on that screen there, talking about the issues with the border. And then, as everyone's watching, it almost sounded what some people thought was like a skip in the speaker or some fireworks. And so it took a second. Then you heard 1, 2, 3 pops, and then you started seeing people hit the ground. And that included us when we were up on the media stage. I looked around, I'm seeing people drop. I see the Secret Service rush in. I see the former president go down behind that podium there, then to come back up just a short time later with blood on his ear. I mean, I think people were in shock. They were trying to get out of there. They were trying to put their safety first. And now it's sinking in about what they saw here. We talk about how there's so many issues when it comes to politics. People don't get along. People don't see eye to eye on these things. But to know that they came to this political rally and to see a former president up there, almost get shot right in the head, just grazing his ear there. One thing to point out when we're talking about where this all laid out. So to kind of put it in perspective, this was in a farming ground. They have a lot of these agriculture events, and the area was locked down by Secret Service and the local, state, and federal authorities who did some sweeps. Everyone's bags get checked, you get wanded down. But this building that we're talking about is the AGR building. That's where we're being told by sources that the shooter was on top of that roof. That was outside of that security perimeter, not too far outside of that perimeter. It was near enough that he was able to fire those shots to almost shoot and kill the former president. But people are wondering exactly how long that shooter was up there, and then also focusing and remembering this man who witnesses tell me was just watching the Trump rally, all excited, clapping and cheering, and then he got shot. We don't know how many times or exactly where his injuries were, but he was near his family, Sean, I'm told. The family was, according to a witness, covered in blood. They were crying, they were screaming, and then he was rushed out. So it's hard to put into perspective exactly how quickly this happened, and I know we hear that a lot when we cover these stories, to be there and be part of it. It is wild to think about how it happened and how quickly it happened and what really could have played out here. We're talking about how many more people could have been injured, and the former president couldn't have made it out alive, Sean.
Alexis, I want to go back to this question here, and I want to say this in the context that over the years I know many people in the Secret Service. We saw people tonight immediately jump on President Trump, meaning they were putting their life in jeopardy by protecting him, which is what they are trained to do. It's a very special person who will do that. However, in the last hour, I did ask you about the proximity of the building. Granted, it was outside of the perimeter, but the proximity of that building to that area, I believe that is going to be, and James Comer is now starting an investigation, as a matter of fact, wants answers as early as next week as to how is it that a building that close, and you can describe how close it is, to that perimeter, that somebody could be on that rooftop and go unnoticed. Or the BBC report, not confirmed by Fox News, but our own Bill Hemmer brought it up in the last hour, a report that, in fact, somebody had tipped off the Secret Service that somebody was on top of that roof at the time. These are questions that need to be answered. I'm not casting aspersions on the Secret Service, but it seems that that would be something that they would be looking at and a top priority.
Yeah, well, we saw those snipers that were up on a nearby roof that was behind the former president where he was speaking, near the security perimeter, too. For hours, those Secret Service agents were up there. They take turns and do those shifts to make sure everything was okay from that aerial view. There was no issues that we had heard about. So to know that this person was not too far from there at this AGR building, which, again, it's an industry sector building, AGR International. That's at 615 Whitestown Road. So it's very close. I mean, short walking distance to where the president was speaking. If he was up there for quite some time or hiding out, I'm not sure how nobody was able to see him. We do see some videos and talk to some witnesses who said that they started to see the posture change of those snipers who were up on that other roof to try to focus on that AGR building. building, and that happened right around the time the shots were fired. So if they did notice him, according to witnesses, it wasn't until seconds or milliseconds before the former president almost got shot right in the head. So people do have a lot of questions about this. And then we talked to the mayor, too, of Slippery Rock, small community here. You know, he was so excited to have the former president here, and he was very concerned, too, about some of the security perimeters, and says he has some questions, too, for law enforcement, exactly how things were laid out, and says he cannot believe this happened in this small community, which they say is the heart of Trump country here in Pennsylvania.
All right, Alexis, great coverage tonight. We really appreciate you staying with us. Thank you very much. We'll be going back to you throughout the evening. We have a lot more coverage. Stay with the Fox News channel. We have a statement that has just been released by the FBI. The FBI has assumed the role of the lead federal law enforcement agency in the investigation of the incident involving former President Donald Trump that occurred earlier today in Butler, Pennsylvania. Special agents of the FBI Pittsburgh field office responded immediately to include crisis response team members and evidence response technicians. We will continue to support this investigation with the full resources of the FBI alongside our partners at the U.S. Secret Service and state and local law enforcement. Anyone with information that may assist with the investigation is asked to call their tip line. We'll put it up on the screen in a minute. It is 1-800-CALL-FBI, 1-800-CALL-FBI. We bring back my friend and colleague, Laura Ingraham, is with us. Laura, I would assume anybody that has any video from any angle is something they're going to want. And, you know, our instincts are very similar because had this not happened today and I had a regular show, which we had planned to do tomorrow from Milwaukee, our regular primetime lineup for Sunday, a special Sunday edition for all of us, I would have gone after that rhetoric of Joe Biden, and I have a lot to say about it. I don't think tonight maybe is the night to be going there. Let's go to the FBI statement. The last 4 appearances by the FBI director, Christopher Wray, on Capitol Hill, he has been crystal clear that the threat level in this country has never been this high since 9/11, maybe ever. And then we get to the issue of immigration, unvetted, almost 11 million, illegal immigrants, 180 countries, some of our top geopolitical foes, some with countries from terror ties. I mean, it's crazy. I want to get your reaction to all of it.
Yeah, Sean, I think you touched on something so important about the Secret Service and the wonderful work that they obviously do. You saw them spring into action. At the same time, we do have to ensure that conspiracy theories don't run wild here. They're not helpful. And the only way to put down conspiracy theories and to let people, let go of them is for the truth to come out. And there will be I hope, a very, very thorough investigation as to how one individual, is it just one? I don't know if we've established that, was able to crawl onto a roof in a distance that is reachable by, it looks like, a high-powered rifle to the former president of the United States. In this day and age, with what's gone on, again, the rhetoric. No one wants to cast aspersions on anyone tonight. I understand that. But we had the president, portrayed as Adolf Hitler in the New Republic on July 7th. We had Joe Biden call him a rapist last night. We've had people say the most horrific things. This man has sacrificed economically, his family, I'm sure at some point it just has to get to you as a person, and now almost losing his life because he wants to help this country. And people say, why do people like Trump so much? Why are his supporters, why are they so loyal to Trump? You know why? Because of what we saw today. Because he got up after, getting hit by, a bullet, something, and he said, I'm here basically fighting for you, and fight on. And we don't have enough people like that in this country in politics. And J.D. Vance tonight was exactly right in his statement that we need a full accounting of what happened. And we also need to remember that this man has been through hell and back for the crime of wanting to improve life for every American of every walk of life, from every political background, ethnic, racial background. That's what Trump gets up every morning interested in doing. And for that, he almost lost his life tonight.
we have talked privately about this, how this is not somebody that really needs to do this. Probably all these legal issues, all these legal issues that he's facing wouldn't have happened had he decided not to run. And then you look at things that have been done and things that have been said, and you know, for example, why do people in the media, why did they go along and accuse people like us who ran unedited video, accuse us of running cheap fake videos, or ignore the fact for so many years that we clearly had a president in cognitive decline? To me, the state-run media has been complicit in what is maybe what Speaker Johnson said, the biggest cover-up in American history. And I think more deeply about this, you know, why is it that nobody seemed to care about a valuation of Mar-a-Lago at $18 million when a rudimentary perusal of real estate may seem inconsequential, but this was a case about valuations. Nobody seemed to care in the media. Nobody cared in the Democratic Party. Nobody cared about a misdemeanor whose statute of limitations had run out, upcharged to 34 felonies. No Democrat, nobody in the media. They didn't care about 51 former intel agents lying. They didn't care about a dirty Russian dossier paid for by Hillary Clinton that was used for 4 FISA warrants, Laura. These are not insignificant things.
And how the media has amplified these attacks on Trump as a fascist dictator who will subjugate all of our individual rights. Our rights are all going to be gone. There's going to be no health care for women. You know, we heard that last night, too. So just think about that. If you're kind of on the edge as a left-wing radical, and you hear that Adolf Hitler could win the presidency, or someone like Hitler, I mean, this just begs for somebody to take that kind of action. And I know, again, we had a lot of incredible, courageous people there today, and God bless them and their families, and we mourn for the victims tonight.
Yeah.
But this is not an isolated incident. This has been building across the last 5 years, or 6, 7 years, of what they have done to Donald Trump. This has been building to this moment. And I am mad and I am sad for the country, but I am mad that the media kept amplifying this without reservation and without any caveats. They kept amplifying this. And it was wrong, and it was an evil lie that they said about him. And they continued to do it up until a few moments before this was happened, as almost happened today to Donald Trump. Let's not forget that tonight.
And let us not forget, and I did this Friday night on Hannity, and I know you've covered the same story, you know, with all the talk about January 6th, they always kept out peacefully, patriotically marched so your voices will be heard. However, there was a vice president. Her name is Kamala Harris, and days after a precinct, police precinct, was burned to the ground, she tweets out for a bail fund. She goes on Colbert. They're not going to stop. They shouldn't stop. We're not going to stop. And it's going to continue. Et cetera. 574 riots in the summer of 2020, dozens of dead Americans, thousands of injured cops, bricks, rocks, bottles, Molotov cocktails, and billions in property damage. But, Laura, they were mostly peaceful, or they didn't happen at all. But anyway, Laura.
No, but Trump is the threat, Sean. Trump, as they said, is the threat to democracy. We all know no one really believes that. They just said it, and words at some point can boil over to the radicals out there who are a little unhinged. They hear this stuff, and over time, you're going to end up in a very dangerous situation. And again, thank you, everyone across the country, praying for the victims and for Donald Trump tonight, and all the Secret Service who sprung into action.
All good Americans, and those guys were amazing. And I know whatever happened as it relates to how this guy got on this rooftop, that will hopefully we'll get to the bottom of that quickly. This can't happen. Laura, we're going to have a lot to talk about. There's a lot to unpack here in the days and weeks ahead. And
Sean, may I just say one more thing? I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Just one more thing, which I forgot to say.
Sure.
I hate interrupting you because this is your... I spoke to President Trump this morning, late morning, and he was so optimistic. He was so pumped about this speech. He was so pumped about announcing his vice president. He didn't tell me who it was, but he was just so optimistic. And amidst all of this, let's remember that we live in the greatest country in the face of the earth with wonderful Americans who really just want a safe country, a better country, and maybe, you know, a little bit more money in their pockets And he's trying to give them that. So he was very optimistic this morning.
And without being too political, you know, this is why open borders is so dangerous. Unvetted people, some of our top geopolitical foes, all these crimes committed that we have been covering, sad, tragic crimes that were preventable, then defund, dismantle, no bail laws. We've got a lot to fix in the country. These are questions, these are issues, topics that we will be discussing from now to Election Day and beyond. Laura Ingraham, always appreciate you being with us. We'll see you in Milwaukee. Thank you. All right, joining us now, 2024 presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is with us. Mr. Kennedy, great to have you. Thank you for being with us. You know, I know we have our political differences, and that's fine. That's not what tonight is all about. There came a moment where, there were a couple of moments where you had requested Secret Service protection, and you are a legitimate presidential candidate. Sir, I went to bat. I'm pretty sure you're aware. I was pretty outspoken about this. When you had requested that protection, you lost your father, you lost your uncle to assassination. And I was shocked that they did not give that to you. And I said, you deserve that at the time. And I believe that today. And I hope they re-examine that question tonight, first thing in the morning, and you get the proper protection that you need. We've got to protect every presidential candidate. But, you know, coming from your family and your background and your personal experience, what was your reaction to today?
Well, you know, my reaction is a hope, Sean, that Americans can kind of take a step back and take a breath and say, it's time to end the vitriol. You know, you were talking about, and Laura was talking about just the anger from both sides, from the media, and people pointing to other political candidates and saying they're going to be the end of the republic, they're going to be the end of democracy. And that kind of poison feeds into this. You know, when my uncle was killed, I was 10 years old. And the morning that he landed in Dallas, there were posters all over Dallas and a front page of a newspaper which had his picture on it saying, wanted dead or alive. And that was the gestalt of that time. It was driven by anger, and in many ways, his murder was a product of that anger. When my father was killed, it was the same time. It was the most divisive time in American history. It was very much like today, most divisive since the Civil War. There were riots in over 100 cities that summer. Martin Luther King was killed 2 months before my father. People were being shot on college campuses. And that anger laid the foundation for my father's murder. And, you know, after President Kennedy's murder, there was a time of regrouping, and there was a time where Americans said to each other, we have to stop this. We have to start looking at each other as part of a big family. We can have differences with each other without despising each other. We are the exemplary democracy of the world. We can't allow our country to devolve into violence. We are better than that, and everybody on both sides, and I'm talking about the other media, but also you and me, and all of us are complicit in some ways in what happened tonight. And I think all of us have to sort of step back now and say, how do we change the tone of this whole campaign? How do we change the tone of the political dialogue in this country and start to forgive each other, to reconcile, to love each other again, and to see each other, to be able to have differences with each other without wanting to murder each other?
Yeah. You know, let's go back. How old were you when your father was assassinated? How old were you when your uncle was assassinated?
I was 10 years old when my uncle was assassinated, and, you know, I remember it like it was yesterday. You know, I was with his body in the Catafalque in the East Room of the White House. I was in the funeral procession, and I remember every moment of it. I was 14 when my dad died, and I was with him when he died in Los Angeles. So I sent a message out, a note out to President Trump tonight and to his family, telling him how relieved I am that he was not more badly injured, wishing him a quick recovery. I'm thanking him for his courage during that event, which was inspirational. But also telling him that Cheryl and I are praying for him. Our whole family is praying for him, for Melania, and for his family, not only for his quick recovery, but for his continued safety during this campaign. And I really wish, I really hope that President Biden reaches out to President Trump and offers him a podium somewhere where the two of these men can and reassure the nation that they're both going to make an effort to end to change the tone of this campaign, so that we all can and inspire us all to start being kind to each other. I think that's what's going to take. And you know, after my uncle died, there was this moment of calm. There was a moment of peacefulness that Congress got together, both sides, and passed the Civil Rights Act, guaranteeing the right to vote for Black Americans. And there was a healing that took place. And I hope the same thing happens now.
I remember, too, I remember your father. I mean, it's a famous video of him announcing to a crowd that Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated. This is all happening in the same time period, as you know. There are two things that I think, you know, that relate directly to you that have to happen as a result of what happened today. And one is, I think you need Secret Service protection immediately for you and your family as a presidential candidate, putting aside our personal political differences, number one. Number two, you know, there's been a lot of talk for a lot of years about releasing the files about your uncle's assassination, and I don't know why there has been reluctance and resistance to do so. I believe President Trump recently said that if elected, he would in fact release those. I wonder why there's any argument as to why not. Would you have a request into President Biden? Have they given you any legitimate reason why they keep refusing you the Secret Service protection that you have requested in light of what has happened to your family?
Yeah, I mean, but I don't, and listen, Sean, I really appreciate you going to bat for me on that issue, because you've done that before and you've done it pretty persistently despite our personal differences with each other. And I think that's the kind of example that, you know, we all need to look like. You don't like anything about my politics, but you have been asking for me to get protection. I don't want to make that, I don't want to make this evening about me. It's about something bigger. And, you know, you talked about the Secret Service in an admiring way. And I really like that you mentioned that these men and women, how they rushed into the gunfire, how they surrounded President Trump. They put their own bodies in the ways of those bullets. They invited people to shoot at them rather than the president, with an extraordinary courage and with a commitment to our country, to our Constitution. They weren't just protecting a man, they were protecting our nation. And I think all of us have to step back and say, you know, we need to have a little bit of that courage in our own lives now. And it might be not running into a bullet, but maybe biting our tongue when we have a really withering reply to give to somebody, maybe not amplifying an angry post from somebody else.
Yeah.
Maybe doing something kind for somebody we don't like, somebody on the other side of the aisle, reaching out and doing something healing. And, you know, I hope that you asked about the JFK files. You know, President Biden and President Trump both promised to release them. I know you have a very, very strong friendship with President Trump, and maybe at some time over dinner or late at night, you can ask him why he decided not to do that. But I don't want to talk about those issues today.
I understand.
My prayers go out for President Trump and his family, and we all, I think every American, whether you like President Trump or not, can, you know, should be praying a prayer of gratitude that he did not, that this was not worse. and also a prayer for his recovery and for healing in our country.
You see that picture that we have on the screen, and him like very strongly showing a fist pump. He just got shot in the ear and had his ear pierced. He came within a millimeter or two of being shot and assassinated. Your family's been through too much, sir. I stand by my statement that you deserve that protection, and I'll continue to advocate for it whether you want me to or not, but it wouldn't be our first disagreement. But anyway, thank you. That's too much for one family to go through, in my view. We appreciate you being with us.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thanks for having me. Good to be back with you.
You bet. Breaking only moments ago, we learned President Biden returning to the White House tonight after this assassination attempt on President Trump. For more, we check back in with our very own Peter Ducey. Peter, he's expected back, last I checked, about, what, 4 minutes from now, 3 minutes from now?
He is going to leave about 4 minutes from now to head to the airplane to take him to Andrews so that they can take a motorcade back to the White House sometime after midnight. But this was not the plan. President Biden was supposed to be at the beach house in Delaware through the weekend. It is very, very unlike the president to change plans so suddenly. We don't know if he just wants to be back to make some kind of remarks in the morning, or if because things are so unsettled at the moment, there is a security reason for him to have to go back to the White House. We don't know that at the moment. What we have seen so far from the president's own remarks is that this event had him do something that I have never heard him do, and maybe I missed it once if it happened, but he called Donald Trump Donald. We hear Joe Biden use all kinds of descriptions for the former president, but he was speaking to him as one president to another, and he said he was trying to get in touch with Donald Trump, but apparently when the president phoned the hospital, Trump was still with his doctors. It's unclear if they've been able to connect yet. I've asked some White House folks. They don't seem to know yet if the two of them have spoken. We know that in Wilmington, the Biden campaign, which has been trying to right the ship after a dismal week domestic policy-wise for the president, they have been spending tens of millions of dollars on campaign ads. Those ads are in the process of being taken down because the Biden team does not want to be seen on the airwaves hitting Donald Trump at this exact moment. They have calculated that it would be bad for them to be making political points, political attacks against somebody who was just shot. Once the president is back at the White House again, we don't know anything about his future comments about this, but he does have a speech scheduled in Austin, Texas, on to commemorate the anniversary of the Civil Rights Act being signed on Monday, and then he's supposed to go out west to Las Vegas to talk to some union leaders on Tuesday and Wednesday. So the real test of whether or not he is going to change plans would be if he cancels any of those events. So far, they have not. Yeah,
Peter,
Sean.
this just broke. Apparently, Joe Biden has spoken with Donald Trump, according to a White House official. That's just breaking. I know you're on the air. Your reaction to that?
Yes, and we will get as many details about that call. Well, it's very, very uncommon. I think the only time that the two of them have ever spoken on the phone was when Biden was a candidate, and he phoned Trump in 2020 because he had some pointers about how he thought the COVID pandemic should be handled. So it is extremely uncommon for the two of them to speak. And that just goes to the point that the president and his team obviously understand this is a very, very serious incident. This is a very, very serious attempted assassination of a political rival, and they are taking it seriously, Sean.
Yeah, we could see that. Well, it's a scary time for our nation, Peter. I mean, when you talk about a millimeter or a couple of millimeters or maybe an inch, and we'd be doing very different coverage tonight. This would not be an assassination attempt. That would not be the coverage. We would be talking about an assassination of a former president tonight. Now, I know that you spend a lot of time on the campaign trail with the president. His remarks last night were as harsh, frankly, and as vicious as they have been. Jill Biden called President Trump evil. this past week. A lot of that's going to be examined in the days and weeks ahead. We're not getting into too much of that tonight, but we're going with the breaking news. But that will be examined in great detail, and I have no doubt that will be a question in the White House press room when you're back there this week or whenever you're back there.
Absolutely. And you mentioned there's also going to be a look at the Secret Service response here. In my time on the campaign trail, something that we see them do towards the end of before the president comes out is and you can see it in the clip that we have been running over and over. The knee-high barrier right there is bulletproof, and so they've got it. I believe at this event they had some red, white, and blue draped over it. Yeah, with the stars. That is bulletproof. And what the Secret Service tries to do in a situation like this with their training is they want to get their protectee behind the bulletproof thing as fast as possible. And that is exactly what those agents did. And so as the discussion becomes how in the world could this have possibly happened, these agents are heroic in the way that they responded. They put their lives on the line to get President Trump behind a bulletproof barricade, even though it's unclear exactly whether or not that would have prevented fire from where the shooter was. The issue is how exactly did all the other law enforcement that are at this huge event miss a shooter on a roof with a direct line of sight to a podium?
Yeah, a lot of questions that's going to be raised in the days ahead, and certainly the close proximity, as we've been pointing out tonight in our coverage. Peter, as always, thank you from the White House. We'll be following what's going on there all throughout the evening. Joining us now, she worked the entire time during the Trump presidency. Kellyanne Conway is with us. Kellyanne, thank you for being with us. Let's get your reaction. I think I believe that Trump fist pump is going to be an iconic image that Americans will remember about this day. I think when Americans absorb just how close this came to an assassination, and then Donald Trump getting up and pumping that fist hard, and not doing it once, doing it multiple times, and then doing it again as he's getting into the car. That's the person that I've known before he ever ran for president. That's the guy that I knew as president. That's the guy that I know today.
There's no question, Sean. Sorry, we have a thunder and lightning storm now in Milwaukee, but look, an assassin's bullet should not be an occupational hazard of running for president, and I do fear that the former and future president came within inches of his life today, and people should know that. I heard so many of the people tonight on Fox News saying he's just built differently, his DNA. He's talked about this often to those of us who were around him, in my case, for 5.5 straight years, over 2,000 days, Secret Service every day, Donald Trump every day. People would say, how do you get your energy? How do you get your moxie, your resilience, your courage, your resilience to go on and on? And he always says, if you want to be different that way, you have to go back and get different genes. He credits his parents and his genes for that. I want to add to the chorus, Sean, of people who are praying for him and Melania Trump, the entire family, everybody who is there at the rally. And I want to say something, Sean. I've been to, as you have, so many of those rallies. I grew up with a forgotten man, forgotten woman. People go there to feel like they're part of a movement. They go there because they love this country and they believe, as Trump does. So many of them have lost family members and friends because of their politics. And the people who were there close to the podium, you know, they waited there all day, if not overnight, just to have a piece of that. And our hearts really go out to them. Sean, it will be iconic. I think what Martha McCallum said to you earlier is very important because it continues 8 years later. When Donald Trump won in 2016, when we had that unbelievable night, people just changed. The media changed, the haters changed, the naysayers changed. I was just a staffer with 24/7 Secret Service protection.
Hey, Kellyanne.
Because people are so crazy. I fear copycats. But God bless Donald Trump. I think tonight, Sean, Donald Trump with that fist pump and him getting up and saying fight, fight, is a metaphor for this whole country. You got to get up, get strong, get resilient, and get back on track.
Kellyanne, I'm told that the weather is putting you in a bit of jeopardy. No, in all seriousness, in a bit of jeopardy. Obviously, we don't want anything to happen to you. We do appreciate you being with us. We'll see you in Milwaukee. I will be broadcasting this show tomorrow night, 9 Eastern, regular Fox lineup with special report, Laura Ingraham, Jesse Waters. I'll be on, Greg Gutfeld, and the 5, I believe, as well. So that's all coming up tomorrow. A statement from the Trump campaign and the RNC has just come out. As was communicated earlier this evening, President Trump is doing well. He is grateful to law enforcement and first responders for their fast action. President Trump looks forward to joining you all in Milwaukee as we proceed with our convention to nominate him to serve as the 47th President of the United States. As our party's nominee, President Trump will continue to share his vision to make America great again. Sincerely, Donald J. Trump for President 2024. Senior advisors Susie Wiles, Chris LaCivita, Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Whatley, and co-chairwoman, and that would be Laura Trump. Joining us now, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. You know, Governor, we know that politics, we often call it or refer to it as a blood sport. This country has been through very tough, turbulent times. We just talked to RFK. His uncle was his father was assassinated. His uncle was assassinated. We saw what happened to President Reagan. I remember exactly where I was the moment that happened. We watched an attempt on Gerald Ford's life. And here we are. We're talking about that much, that difference, that millimeter or two. And we may be having a very different story tonight. It's chilling.
I think we have to be very aware of the fact that God's hand was on Donald Trump tonight. But if you look
Amen,
back,
Governor.
I would say God's hand has been on Donald Trump since he came down the escalator. Every possible way to destroy him has been used, every possible way. They've gone after him in criminal court. They've gone after him in civil court. They've gone after him with fake impeachments, with the most ridiculous charges thrown at him time and time again. He's the most resilient man I've ever seen. I have to believe that God spared Donald Trump today because he knows we need Donald Trump to lead this nation back to a place where people could live their lives in freedom and respect and responsibility. And we haven't had that. And it's time we get back to it. And I'll get mocked for saying this, but the battle we're in, Sean, is not political, it's spiritual. And we need to understand that we are in a spiritual battle in this nation.
You probably are right. You probably will be attacked for that statement. Will Joe Biden be attacked for his statement that he's not getting out of the race unless the Lord God Almighty tells him to get out? Wasn't that much coverage of that.
No, and there won't be a lot of coverage for that. But those of us who really take our faith seriously, and I do, look, I see what happened tonight as an extraordinary moment. I'm heartbroken for the families who lost a loved one tonight. That breaks my heart. It's a tragic thing for all of this country and for the world to see this happen to a person who is trying to lead us, a person who sacrificed his salary, never took a salary as president, made huge sacrifices financially to run and to serve as president. He didn't make money off the deal. He lost money off of it. And yet for that, he's hated in a way I've never seen. But he keeps getting up. And what we saw tonight really was a metaphor for everything Donald Trump has represented as president. He got up off the floor, blood coming down his face, sticks his fist in the air, and says, we're going to keep fighting. That's the Donald Trump that we're going to elect November the 5th to be President 47. And honestly, it won't come fast enough.
All right. We really appreciate your time, Governor Mike Huckabee. Thank you tonight. Now, this investigation into this heinous attack is now underway. The FBI has now taken the lead in the ongoing probe. Agents are on the scene, but we also need to know, how did this happen? Who's responsible for tonight's massive security failure? Joining us now, former Secret Service agent Tim Miller, Fox News contributor, former NYPD Inspector Paul Morrow, former FBI Special Agent, Fox News contributor Nicole Parker. Nicole, let me start with you tonight and ask you, I think the thing that shocked me the most about tonight, and I want to really backtrack, because as we show this image of this moment, and President Trump grabs his ear and instinctively drops behind the podium, incredible instincts, then gets up and puts his fist in the air, kind of an iconic image, I believe. And you look how quickly they jumped on him. You've got to love these guys, because they're risking their life by jumping on him, knowing that shots are being fired. However, then the report of our Fox News reporter on the ground, Alexis, earlier tonight, pointing out that this building, while outside the perimeter, having somebody on the roof, how did that happen? And then, of course, a BBC report, we've not independently confirmed it, that in fact, maybe the Secret Service, we'll find out in time, I'm not rushing to judgment here, that they might have been tipped off about that. That seems to be a major breach to me, instinctively. Your thoughts?
Well, I think one of the things we have to look at now is in the immediate future here is why we haven't gotten a briefing. I mean, the entire nation has very profound questions about what occurred here. In a situation like this, the FBI, generally it'll be the field office leader, the SAC generally, a special agent in charge on the ground, who's going to take control of this and should have given us at least that very basic briefing to say there's no further danger to the public. Usually you get those. I don't see anybody taking control of this situation, so it leaves us all to guess. And we have a lot of questions. You know, are there any other people involved? Is the shooter identified? I'm leaning no, because they're asking for tips. Why was that rooftop not swept? Were there adequate resources? Was this a resource issue? Had the Trump campaign, in light of some of the rhetoric, ever requested further resources? Why were there no drones up?
Well, let me interrupt you, because I think that you're raising a really important question. Dan Bongino, a friend of mine in the program, former Secret Service agent in his own right, actually put on X tonight a post that said he can absolutely confirm that the U.S. Secret Service Director, Kim Cheadle, has repeatedly turned down requests for a larger security footprint around President Trump, despite knowing the threat level is catastrophic. Resigned tonight, he said. Now, that's going to be investigated, but that was the question you just asked, and, you know, I would think that Dan has pretty good sources in the Secret Service.
I'm sure he does, and, you know, that is the question. And in light, again, of some of the rhetoric that has been coming around about him, not only from in the media, but even from some of our elected officials, the end of democracy, et cetera, you know, you start to see that there should have been an intel assessment here that said we cannot leave a nearby rooftop unguarded, not with one that has sight lines to the principal. Now, look, I've done a lot of details with the Secret Service. All the bosses on the NYPD have, and you work very closely with them, and they're a very professional outfit. But they're only human, and they only have so many resources. This was done in a local jurisdiction. I doubt Butler PD is very large. Was there a request? Secret Service runs this thing on the ground. Was there a request for state resources? And I have to wonder why you're getting, you know, sort of conflicting statements here. We've heard some things that apparently Butler PD is saying, well, it was shrapnel from the lectern that hit Donald Trump. It wasn't a bullet. Donald Trump's put out a statement that's saying that he was shot. We shouldn't be having these sorts of guesses now. There should have been a presser to reassure the nation that our federal authorities, because this is going to be a federal investigation, that our federal authorities have their arms around this. And I just don't sense a boss in the room. This wouldn't fly in New York. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Let me get to Nicole Parker. And Nicole spent years working with the FBI out of their Miami bureau. I look at this, and again, I see great heroism from the Secret Service here. On the other hand, I'm looking at the perimeter, outside the perimeter, on a roof, maybe a report, not confirmed yet, that, in fact, somebody had witnessed somebody on that roof. That would be a major security breach, Nicole.
Oh, absolutely, Sean. Again, I'm with you. I echo your accolades for the special agents who jumped in front of President Trump, did their job, and removed him as quickly as possible to get care. But I can tell you that there is a problem here, because for someone to be that close in range to, you know, the former president of the United States, knowing all of these major threats going on, this was a failure. And I have to tell you, my sources say similar to what Paul said. Apparently, they did ask for more help. There were agents in Secret Service who did ask for more assistance, and they were told no. And so that's problematic. And let's go back to some of the issues with the Secret Service. Again, it's kind of like the FBI, right? You've got FBI 1 and FBI 2. You've got the heroism, and then you've got the nonsense going on many times at the top. Okay, these agents that jumped in to protect President Trump are, you know, the heroes. But every time that there is an event, I too have worked with the Secret Service. I've actually worked a detail that President Trump attended as a former president. And the Secret Service goes in, they go do an advanced detail, typically 7 to 10 days before. And then 12 hours before, they do an additional sweep and make sure that there are no issues. But to have someone that close to him is unacceptable. What is the Secret Service focused on? If it's like the FBI, unfortunately, they're focused on things like DEI and other issues that really are not of primary importance. Their #1 priority should be to protect those that they are sworn to protect. And there are agents that are overworked, underpaid. The attrition there at the Secret Service, it is a very difficult job. They have to travel nonstop. I mean, they are working their tails off. They are exhausted. So again, I want to say thank you to the agents that are working very, very hard. But for the leadership that allowed this to happen, that does need to be investigated. That is unacceptable.
And we did get word from James Comer, chairman of the House Oversight Committee, that in fact that investigation will begin. Tim Miller, former Secret Service agent. Let me ask you, had you ever heard any reports that in fact that there were requests from Trump's inner circle to build out his team to make it bigger and more secure, that he needed more security? And your thoughts on the rooftop shooting from outside the perimeter, but very near where the venue was? I would think that that would be pretty fundamental in terms of being looked at and watched very closely.
You're exactly right, Sean. And, you know, this is a Secret Service agent's worst nightmare. And having worked on the president's detail, done lots of advances through the years, it's a meticulous thing to make sure every detail of every site that you're going to is safe and secure. We rely on our law enforcement partners, but at the end of the day, the Secret Service has to cover it. Today was shocking to me. It was absolutely fantastic to watch the response of the detail. They demonstrated the absolute most excellence that they could in terms of all of their previous training to respond. But remember, the Secret Service's job is to make it not happen. It's proactive security. And how that guy got on the roof, that's a problem. I know I worked a lot with, you know, the counter sniper guys as a lead advance and as a detail guy. And I agree with your guest. It's a resource issue because remember, this president is going after it. He is traveling everywhere. And so there are multiple sites in a day. And this one slipped through the cracks. Well, we said every time we did a site assessment, it just takes one small miss on our part to make a big deal and possibly even a president's
Tim,
life
let me go
being lost.
Let me go a little deeper, because I agree, as we have been showing all night in this tape, in that moment when this happened and Donald Trump got hit and he dropped quickly, instinctively, to his credit, before he got up and he put that fist up in the air. But those agents were all over him. I have no doubt they tackled him and tackled him hard. And you could see the president almost, you know, battling with him to get his fist up in the air because they wanted to get him into that car, which is the Donald Trump that I've known all these 30 years, and which speaks to his strength. But I want to go back to close proximity of outside that perimeter. And we all know what a rifle can do. I've been trained in the use of firearms since I'm 10, 11 years old. And that would not be a hard shot with a rifle with somebody with skill. Now, the fact that it got that close and it was a slight turn of the head tells me whoever pulled that trigger was pretty well trained in the use of a firearm. Would you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the fact that a person with an AR-15, which is very effective within 300 yards, and I understand the building is within that range, that's a primary target. And again, it was mentioned, what resources did Butler PD have in terms of SWAT to cover areas? I think it's going to come back to a resource issue. It takes resources to thoroughly protect a man like Donald Trump, especially given the threat environment that he's facing. And I just thank God that that bullet missed by that much.
If the director of the U.S. Secret Service, if it turns out that requests were made for more security and it was denied, that person needs to be held accountable immediately. And I support what James Comer is doing. We need an immediate investigation. We need immediate answers about the lead up to this. And there's going to be plenty we're going to be talking about in the days and weeks ahead. But Tim Miller, thank you. Paul Morrow, thank you. Nicole Parker, thank you. Joining us now, we bring back our friend, our colleague, Martha MacCallum. She is in Milwaukee. I believe you're in Milwaukee tonight. Am I mistaken? Or you might be in New York still?
On my way there shortly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But good to be back with you, Sean.
So there's really a lot of things that are going to be discussed that I feel with all the breaking news, maybe not the appropriate night to get into the politics of all this, the rhetoric. There'll be plenty of time to debate a lot of that, and I have a lot to say. I already had a monologue half written for tomorrow night, where we have our regular primetime lineup, a special Sunday edition, and it was about Joe Biden's rhetoric from yesterday and Jill Biden's rhetoric from earlier in the week. That will be something we discuss. Certainly what we were just discussing, Secret Service coverage in this particular case, the close proximity of this building, that somebody was on the roof, possible report, if you believe the BBC, somebody saying, hey, I saw this guy, I tried to tell the Secret Service, makes that worse. Or was it a personnel issue? Were there requests made and denied? Like in the case of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'd said many times on the air, Martha, that I felt that Robert Kennedy Jr., in light of all that his family had gone through, he probably would be a target, and he is a presidential candidate. I don't agree with him politically, but it's not about politics. It's about basic safety. We've got to keep our politicians safe and secure.
Absolutely. And, earlier tonight I looked up this AGR building because everyone on the ground, several people on the ground, were talking about on these videos that have been online, and we've been working to confirm them and to, get some kind of grounding on how realistic this scenario is. But, you look at this building, this AGR building, which is like a manufacturing kind of facility, a glass company, and it's on Evans City Road, which is just behind where the Butler Farm grounds are. And it has a separate entrance. So there's a separate way to get into that building away from the perimeter, which we already know from the statement that we got from Secret Service. It was outside the perimeter from an elevated space. So it raises a lot of questions. And of course, we don't know anything yet about this shooter, but it raises questions about whether or not he is a local person. Maybe, does he work for this company? Does he know that area? Does he know that that would be outside of the perimeter and that he would be able to scale the side of that building? It said that some of the reports said that he basically grappled up the side of the building in camo, it appears, and was lying on the top of it, and that several people in the area tried to get the police's attention to let them know. One man said that he was, saying to the Secret Service guys, pointing up on top of the building, but he said their vantage point probably was at a point where they couldn't see him. Now, all of this, Sean, as you've been saying, and we've all been saying all night, there's a serious investigation going on. The FBI has now taken the lead in this investigation, and we need to know a lot more about why that rooftop, which was in a perfect spot, as it turns out, to have sniper range on this area, wouldn't have been swept and wouldn't be inside the perimeter if it had the ability to be in such close proximity. So they're troubling questions. We all see the actions of the Secret Service on the ground there, but in terms of what was requested, that's part of this investigation. And Sean, it's very unsettling for all of us to think that the president or the former president could be in this kind of danger, in this kind of environment. It's got to be changed.
There's going to be a lot of legitimate questions, and they're happening. Martha MacCallum, we will see you in Milwaukee all week next week. Thank you. We'll be watching your coverage every day. This just breaking. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has now said that the House will conduct a full investigation of the tragic events today. The American people deserve to know the truth. We will have the Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheadle, and other appropriate officials from DHS and the FBI FBI appear for a hearing before our committees as soon as possible. Our very own Chad Pergram breaking that news moments ago. Joining us now, he is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. He's also an Ohio congressman. Jim Jordan is on with us tonight. Jim, let's talk about and follow up on what we've been discussing here. And that is that just slightly outside the perimeter, well within sniper range, we had this shooter on this building. It seems inconceivable on paper to me. Again, I'm juxtaposing this next to great courage that we saw these agents immediately protect the former president, jumped on top of him. I wouldn't be surprised if he was injured from that. However, look at the proximity. We have it up on our screen right now. That is within sniper range, and clearly whoever fired these shots had some level of skill. There's no doubt about it. A slight turn of the head. And Congressman, we have a very different story we're covering tonight.
No, it would be tragic. No, thank the good Lord that President Trump's okay. Thank the good Lord for those brave Secret Service agents who were right there on the spot. But this concern about what happened off the property, as the speakers indicated, the House will be looking into that. But I think, and you've talked about this tonight, Sean, I think the real thing here that stands out so much to me is the leadership under fire. That fist bump, the leadership under fire, literally leadership under fire from President Trump. I think that's what the American people see, and we're so thankful. Thank the good Lord that he wasn't seriously hurt, that something more tragic didn't happen. And of course, our thoughts are with the supporters who were hit. But as the speaker indicated, we will look into this. We will investigate this, but right now I think what stands out in so many Americans' minds is the leadership we saw from President Trump while he was literally under fire, showing the strength of the leader that he truly is. And I always say, you've been to many of these rallies, I've been to many of them. There is a bond that exists between the people there and President Trump, his supporters. And when he pumped that fist and walked off the stage, and the crowd starts chanting USA, that the country understands what this guy's been through, and the stamina, the courage, the leadership that he truly displays and has. And I think that really came through.
You know, Jim, I think what really came through is the guy that I have known for almost 30 years, and that is him. I think it projected a strength that is quintessentially Donald Trump. Whether you like his politics or don't like his politics, that is him.
There's something about him that I haven't known him as long as you have, but I've gotten to know him over these last several years, and there's something amazing about his spirit, his will, his energy, and his leadership, and we saw that. It's a terrible situation. We wish it never happened to our country, but I think tonight it's about our country, but it's also about what we saw from the guy that I think is going to be the next president of our country, President Trump.
Yeah, well, I do want to take a moment. There were people that lost loved ones today, people that lost their lives today, and all of our prayers, all of our thoughts are with all of them, and we can't forget them in this as well. But this campaign will move forward. This investigation will take place. The president has been very clear, and his campaign has been clear that, in fact, Milwaukee is on, and that, in fact, he will be there. Jim Jordan, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sean. God bless America.
God bless America. Amen to that. Make no mistake, a terrible day. An innocent person dead. Others seriously injured. Donald Trump came within an inch or less of losing his life. But our prayers tonight go out to him, to his family, to all the victims, to all their families. A lot of questions yet to be answered. We'll have much more of that coverage from Milwaukee. Stay with the Fox News Channel for continuing.
Fox News alert, President Trump has left the hospital following an apparent assassination attempt at the rally late this afternoon in Butler, Pennsylvania.